Chapter 154. Fong Beibei couldn't believe her ears when she received Poplar Fruit's call. She looked at the time. It had only been less than an hour and a half. In addition to Fong Beibei's voice, Poplar Fruit also heard Kiki laughing happily for some reason. At this time, his hanging heart finally settled down. Fong Beibei was very dissatisfied with Poplar Fruit's worry. She didn't let Poplar Fruit come over. You don't even focus on the exam. Taking care of a child isn't like you. How can you follow her every day? As an adult, do you still have your own life? You have to know when to let go. You always say that Kiki loves to cry and throw tantrums after leaving you, but she's fine now. Why don't you let her try a day without you by her side? Fong Beibei lectured. Today you have to take the exam properly. You're not allowed to call before 5 p.m. After 5 p.m., I'll bring Kiki back to you in one piece. Poplar Fruit stood on the road outside the exam hall. He stared blankly at the phone that had been hung up. He was motionless like a statue. The parents next to him saw this and sighed again. After being in a daze for a while, Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and walked away. Since Fong Beibei said so, what else could he do? Moreover, hearing Kiki's voice and knowing that she was in a good condition, Poplar Fruit was relieved. Perhaps, like what Fong Beibei said, letting go at an appropriate time wasn't necessarily a bad thing. At noon, Poplar Fruit went to a hotel outside the school and booked 2 days of rest. Because the cheaper hostels and hotels had been booked early, Poplar Fruit could only choose the most expensive room, which cost 388 yuan a day. The second exam was foreign language. At this level, the French exam was as simple as elementary school English questions. Poplar Fruit finished his paper early and walked out of the exam hall. He was anxious, but he held it in. He sat on the stone chair next to the exam hall and waited until 5 p.m. Kiki was later carried down by Fong Beibei. She had a lot of fun today. She didn't sleep at noon and only fell asleep in the afternoon. When Poplar Fruit saw his daughter, she was still immersed in sweet dreams. Even her closed mouth revealed a trace of a smile. Poplar Fruit's feelings at this moment as he hugged his daughter. He was happy for his daughter because even without her father's company, she didn't cry and throw a tantrum. He was also relieved because his daughter had her arms around his neck for the past 8 months. And he was completely bound by his daughter. Sometimes when she hugged his neck, Poplar Fruit couldn't breathe. But Poplar Fruit was more disappointed. Poplar Fruit was used to being relied on and needed by his daughter. But his daughter didn't need him anymore. She didn't rely on him anymore. Poplar Fruit felt that his life was suddenly incomplete. It was just like when Lu Yunran left his life all of a sudden. A piece of his heart was missing. After bidding farewell to Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit walked out of the school gate. He waited for Song Jiwen, who came to pick him up, to go home together. Kiki woke up in the car. She opened her eyes in a daze and felt her father's familiar heartbeat. Seeing her father's familiar face, a smile bloomed on Kiki's face again. Poplar Fruit only realized it when Kiki squeezed against his chest. He looked down and saw Kiki's little face rubbing against her father's thin clothes. She blinked her big eyes and looked at her father. Poplar Fruit suddenly felt relieved. What was there to be upset about? No matter who Kiki played with and how well she played, the person she loved the most would always be her father, right? The last subject of the postgraduate entrance examination was politics. Compared to the previous 3 subjects, which were effortless, this subject was a little crazy. Even though Yang Guo had read a lot of reference books, there were still some questions on this test paper that he had never heard of before. As long as Poplar Fruit had read the questions before, Poplar Fruit could easily choose the correct answer. However, reference books weren't omnipotent. The person who came up with the questions used knowledge that didn't appear in the reference books. What could he do if he didn't know how to do it? Poplar Fruit smiled. He chose C for all the multiple choice questions that he didn't know how to do. Was there a need to repeatedly look at questions that he didn't understand at all? Poplar Fruit had such a cool attitude when answering questions when he was in school. There were also 2 subjective questions that Poplar Fruit didn't know how to answer. He didn't rack his brains to come up with some random answers, so he just left them blank. As for the questions that he didn't know how to answer, even if he got all of them wrong, he would only get around 20 marks, so he didn't care. Poplar Fruit spent a little more time on the politics test because he had to write more. However, he still handed in his test paper 1.5 hours early. He was still the anomaly in the examination hall that attracted a lot of attention. This time, Poplar Fruit still kept his promise and called Fong Beibei after 5 o'clock. He didn't tell Fong Beibei that he handed in his test paper early. If he did, he would still have to explain. It was too boring. Poplar Fruit promised to treat Fong Beibei and her roommates to dinner after the exam. When he called, Poplar Fruit also asked Fong Beibei to call her roommates down. "Where are you guys going to eat?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "Senior, you can decide." This time, Lu Ruhua was a lot more reserved than yesterday. She didn't ask Poplar Fruit to give her money. "Why don't we go to Little North Gate to eat?" Fong Beibei suggested. Little North Gate was the most popular place for students to eat and drink. When Poplar Fruit was in school, he often went there to eat barbecue and drink beer with Song Jiwen and a few of his buddies. However, the quality of the food there was too low. Although Poplar Fruit understood that Fong Beibei was thinking about his wallet, he still wanted to find a better place. They were all students. If they went to such a high-end place, they probably wouldn't enjoy it. Poplar Fruit thought for a while and said, "Why don't we go to Sejinji restaurant?" Fong Beibei and the others didn't know where Poplar Fruit was talking about. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Just follow me." After they left the school gate, Poplar Fruit led them to another road across the street. It took them about 10 minutes to reach the place. This was actually a food stall, but it was more high-end than a food stall. The cost was high, and almost no students came here. When they were students, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen came here a few times. They were invited by their godfather. After eating, Poplar Fruit realized that such a deserted place hid a good place for foodies. No one greeted them. They found a seat and sat down. After a while, the only waiter in the restaurant brought over a teapot, a plastic bowl, and a menu. After putting down the things, he turned around and went to the back to serve the dishes. "Don't mind it." Poplar Fruit pointed at the pen and paper and smiled. "You have to write down what you want to order. It's like this here." When Lu Ruhua and the others looked at the menu, Poplar Fruit introduced, "This restaurant is more famous for pig stomach chicken. This is a must order. The tofu is also very good. You can order what you want to eat." The girls thought about it and didn't want to eat pork with preserved vegetables. In the end, they ordered steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, fried pork with abalone mushrooms, double-cooked pork, and a plate of lettuce. Poplar Fruit handed the menu to Fong Beibei and said, "Beibei, you haven't ordered yet." Fong Beibei had just looked at the menu. The price of every dish on it made her click her tongue. She smiled and said, "No, it's already 6 dishes. I can't eat any more." Poplar Fruit knew what she meant, but he still ordered crispy fried fresh milk. He still wanted dessert. While waiting for the dishes to be served, Poplar Fruit chatted with them. Today, Fong Beibei's roommates didn't make fun of Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. However, the atmosphere wasn't very boring. Under the influence of the lively Lu Ruhua, several girls began to take turns to interrogate Poplar Fruit. "Senior, you haven't told us where you're from." Lin Xingshan asked boldly, "Why don't you guess?" Yanghua smiled. Fong Beibei, who was sitting on his right, was playing with Kiki. When she heard Poplar Fruit's words, she raised her head and looked at Poplar Fruit. Lu Ruhua said first, "I guess you're also from the northeast. But the accent doesn't sound like it." Lu Lei retorted, "It sounds like the accent is from Guangdong province." "How can there be such a tall boy in Guangdong province?" Lu Ruhua said disdainfully, "Senior, you're almost 1.9 meters tall." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "No, I'm more than 1.8 meters tall." He was about 1.8 meters tall, so it wasn't wrong to say that he was 1.8 meters tall. "That's right, you're definitely from the northeast," Lu Ruhua said happily. "Have you ever heard of a northeastern person speaking Mandarin like that?" Lu Lei said, unwilling to give up. Poplar Fruit suddenly had a playful heart. He suddenly changed to the Beijing accent that he learned from Zhang Yujia and said, "Look at what you're saying. Does it mean that I'm from wherever I speak?" Lu Ruhua and the others were stunned when they heard this. With a smile, Poplar Fruit began to imitate Uncle Benshan. He spoke Mandarin very quickly, and Lu Ruhua didn't react at all. She didn't understand the first half. But Lu Ruhua understood the second half, and it was a very intimate local accent. She said excitedly, "I told you that senior is from the northeast. Look at how fluent he is in Mandarin." Wu Yani covered her forehead and didn't say anything. Fang Beibei laughed and said, "Ahua, don't you understand? Uncle is just messing around with you." Seeing that Lu Ruhua still didn't understand, Poplar Fruit changed to Hong Kong Mandarin again. He used all kinds of strange accents, and even pronounced "this is as Jia is," which made the girls laugh. This time Lu Ruhua finally understood. She said in annoyance and amusement, "Can't we chat properly? Can't we still be friends?" In the end, she pulled Lu Lei's arm and said, "Lei, in the future, when you find a boyfriend, don't find a guy who speaks Mandarin like senior. He's too cunning. Whenever you check on him, he can play several roles to deceive you." Poplar Fruit raised his hands and said, "Don't be like that, I was wrong. I didn't do it on purpose. We're not vegetarians, so don't bite us with the same brush, okay?" "That's not right." With the Taiwanese accent, Poplar Fruit couldn't stop playing. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 155. The girls continued to question him. However, Poplar Fruit had experience in a foreign trade company, so this kind of small situation was not difficult for him. He played Tai Chi and pushed them away while asking about their background. In the end, before they could ask about Poplar Fruit had already found out about their depth. Fang Beibei's roommates Lu Ruhua and Wu Yani were from other provinces. Lu Ruhua was from the northeast. No wonder she was so tall. Wu Yani was from Shanghai. She was a little aloof and didn't talk much. However, Poplar Fruit felt that her coldness was different from Duan Xueqing. Duan Xueqing was cold and ignored all disturbances. However, Wu Yani's coldness was faked. She was a little like a proud swan, disdaining to talk to people she looked down on. Of course, she didn't show it, but Poplar Fruit was still keenly aware of it. Yang Guo only smiled at this girl and didn't pay her any mind. Lin Xingshan and Lu Lei were both from Guangdong province. One was introverted, while the other wasn't. However, they could still chat a lot with people they were familiar with. Fang Beibei didn't join in. She listened quietly at the side, and occasionally said a few words when she was involved. Poplar Fruit didn't see anything from her face, but she seemed a little unhappy today. Fang Beibei obviously didn't tell them about Poplar Fruit's work. Just when they wanted to ask about Poplar Fruit's work and income, Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "The dishes are served. Let's eat." The girls present didn't come from provinces that like spicy food, so this table of Hakka dishes was more to their taste. Poplar Fruit was a person who was very particular about food. How could the food he recommended be bad? Soon, the girls started eating without caring about their image. The word praise wasn't enough to describe the deliciousness of the dishes on the table. The girls were so busy eating that they didn't even have time to talk. Towards the end of the meal, Lu Ruhua leaned back on the chair and rubbed her stomach as she lamented. "Today, I went over the limit again. I've gone on a diet for nothing this week." After paying the bill, the girls went to the bathroom, leaving only Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei sitting there. Fang Beibei turned the teacup silently. Poplar Fruit hesitated and said, "Beibei, if you have time, can you come to my house more often? Or ask you out to play?" Fang Beibei raised his head and looked at Poplar Fruit. He panicked and added, "It's mainly because Kiki likes you a lot." Looking at Poplar Fruit's eyes that were as deep as the starry sky, Fang Beibei nodded softly. When they got home, Kiki fell asleep quickly. Poplar Fruit poured himself a cup of hot water and sat on the chair on the balcony, enjoying the cold wind and looking at the waning lights. He sat there for a long time and didn't drink the water even when it was cold. He wasn't thinking about anything, but his heart felt empty. Perhaps he had been lonely for too long. After the exams, Poplar Fruit threw himself into a new round of work and study. However, surprises always came unexpectedly. "Dad!" Kiki shouted at a high pitch and immediately woke Poplar Fruit up from the Swedish textbook in his hands. Poplar Fruit put down the book and walked to Kiki's side. He squatted down and asked, "What's wrong?" That. Kiki opened her mouth wide and smiled, revealing 3 jade-like teeth, 2 at the bottom and 1 at the top. It was very beautiful. Of course, Kiki wasn't referring to her teeth. Poplar Fruit followed Kiki's hand and looked over. Goldie was lying there quietly, looking up at the sky. There was nothing? Poplar Fruit was a little puzzled. No. Goldie's eyes. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood why Kiki was so excited. It turned out that, after more than 10 days in the Yang family, Goldie finally opened its eyes. Goldie didn't seem to be able to see clearly. Its eyes were a little confused. Poplar Fruit felt that when it raised its head, it might have felt his movement. During this period of time, if Kiki and Goldie were awake, Poplar Fruit would carry Goldie to Kiki's side to play with Kiki. Kiki's weight was about the same as Goldie's now. Poplar Fruit wasn't worried that either of them would hurt the other. Kiki of course liked Goldie a lot. Although Goldie couldn't see and didn't understand human language, Kiki wasn't speaking human language now. She would often hug Goldie's body and babble. Sometimes Kiki would even sing to Goldie. The songs that Poplar Fruit often played for her, Kiki could even hum the melody. Although Kiki's melody would often be broken or mixed when she sang, Kiki's performance was already very amazing. Goldie also liked the feeling of being by Kiki's side. As a puppy that had just been born, Goldie treated Kiki's warm body as someone it could rely on. If Kiki turned around to look for other toys, Goldie would hurriedly look around for Kiki's traces, and then squeeze its way to Kiki's side. This time when Goldie opened its eyes, Kiki, who had been playing with it, was the first to notice. She was probably wondering why her little friend didn't have eyes before. This discovery made Kiki very happy, so Kiki excitedly shared this news with her father. Taking out his phone, Poplar Fruit looked for information in this area, and found that although the puppy opened its eyes, it still couldn't see anything. Poplar Fruit carefully observed its eyes, and at the moment, there seemed to be a layer of mist on the surface of its eyes, and it was misty. But this was normal. After a few days, the layer of mist in Goldie's eyes would disappear by itself, and then it would be able to see. Poplar Fruit touched Kiki's little head, and gave her an approving smile. Goldie opened its eyes and Poplar Fruit decided to post on Weibo. He opened the camera function on his phone, and in order not to stimulate Goldie's not fully developed eyes, Poplar Fruit turned off the flash, found an angle with sunlight, and took a photo. In the photo, Kiki was also not willing to be left out, and she broke into the camera, smiling happily with her head raised. Poplar Fruit smiled at her, and said, "Don't worry, I won't forget your contribution." After posting on Weibo, Poplar Fruit thought for a while, then found Fong Bei's QQ, and sent the photo to her. As soon as he put down his phone, Fong Bei called. Goldie opened its eyes? Fong Bei said in surprise, "Don't tell me you opened it." "No, you said not to let me open it, and I always remember," Poplar Fruit complained. "This time, it was Kiki who found it," Poplar Fruit explained. "It just opened its eyes, and it can't see anything clearly." "Of course it can't see," Fong Bei said. She told Poplar Fruit a lot of things to pay attention to on the phone, such as not to stimulate it with strong light, and to increase the amount of milk to supplement nutrition, and Poplar Fruit listened patiently. "Let me talk to Kiki for a while." In the end, Fong Bei asked Poplar Fruit to turn on the phone's volume, and handed it to Kiki. Looking at Kiki and Fong Bei happily chatting, Poplar Fruit was inexplicably envious. When he called Fong Bei, she didn't chat with him. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations, please use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 156. When they were in school, society was like a roller coaster in an amusement park. It was full of excitement, and they yearned to step into society as soon as possible to explore and adventure. But once they entered society, they would slowly start to miss the time in school. Back then it was just you and me. It was an ivory tower world with only books and love. Time was gone, and no matter how much they missed it, they couldn't return to the past unless they became the main character of a rebirth novel. However, after getting used to the deceit of society, people would think of their old classmates, those who used to talk about life without any worries or scruples. And so, the party began. On Wednesday, Poplar Fruit received a call from his class monitor, Luo Feiyue, asking him to come out on Saturday night for a gathering. This gathering was mainly for his classmates who were still working in Yangcheng. Of course, because there weren't many people in his class, he also invited his juniors who had just graduated this year. When his classmates in Yangcheng had just graduated, they would gather once every month or two. Later on, it gradually became less frequent. This time, it was almost a year ago and Poplar Fruit cherished it very much. So he readily agreed. The location of the gathering was a hot pot restaurant. It was less than 2 streets away from where Poplar Fruit used to live. The reason why the class monitor didn't choose a hotel was because he considered everyone spending power. They were all people who had worked for less than 2 years, and the price of the hot pot restaurant was just right. At most, each person would pay 100 yuan. The class monitor planned to pay for the rest. On Saturday, because Song Chunfang needed a car, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen stopped a taxi. They picked up Duan Xueqing and went to the gathering together. When they arrived at the destination, the class monitor, Luo Feiyue, and Duan Xueqing's class monitor, Zhou Guanglan, were already waiting at the door. Poplar Fruit looked through the taxi window and saw Luo Feiyue and Zhou Guanglan standing together. Their bodies were pressed together, and they looked like a newlywed couple welcoming their wedding guests. I heard that old Luo hooked up with Guanglan. Song Jiwen turned his head from the front seat and smiled slyly. So that's how it is. No wonder the gathering required 2 grades to be together. Poplar Fruit was suddenly enlightened. Poplar Fruit and the others got out of the car. Luo Feiyue and Zhou Guanglan immediately greeted them. Jiwen. Luo Feiyue gave Song Jiwen a big hug. Zhou Guanglan also affectionately held Duan Xueqing's hand. The 2 girls chatted softly on the side. Although they hadn't seen each other for a year, Luo Feiyue didn't recognize Poplar Fruit at first glance. After he carefully looked at him, he said in disbelief, "Poplar Fruit? It's you, kid? How did you become so tall and handsome?" Furthermore, Luo Feiyue's eyes widened as if he had discovered a new continent. He pointed at Kiki in Poplar Fruit's arms and asked, "What's going on here?" Song Jiwen interrupted Poplar Fruit and laughed. "What do you think? You didn't expect this, did you? This is Poplar Fruit's daughter." "It can't be." Luo Feiyue looked at Poplar Fruit in shock and nodded with a smile. He turned sideways and secretly pointed at Duan Xueqing, who came with Poplar Fruit, and asked in a low voice, "It can't be?" No, it can't be." Poplar Fruit froze for a moment and denied it with a smile. "Then that girl surnamed Lu?" Luo Feiyue had seen Poplar Fruit and Lu Yunran together when they were in school. "No," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "This won't do. It's too fast, too fast. Poplar Fruit, brat, you better be prepared to confess later. Let's see which beauty has trapped our handsome brother." Luo Feiyue laughed. Because of Kiki's unexpected appearance, Luo Feiyue had forgotten the fact that Poplar Fruit had become taller and more handsome. He and Zhou Guanglan asked Poplar Fruit and the others to go to the private room first. There were still a few people who hadn't arrived, so they had to wait. I remember that old Luo went to a real estate company. It seems that he has made a lot of money in the past 2 years. Poplar Fruit said as he walked inside with Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen said with a smile, "I heard that he's doing well. It seems that he has his own sales team. Did you see his watch?" "I didn't notice. What brand is it?" Poplar Fruit asked. "You don't pay attention to fashion." Song Jiwen criticized. "Whether a man has money or taste depends on his watch and his belt. His watch is a Swiss Longines, at least 10,000 yuan. That's really good. I think his whole temperament is very good. He's more straightforward and heroic than before." Poplar Fruit laughed. He had a good eye for people, but generally, he judged them based on their temperament. First, he was not familiar with those fashionable brands. Second, he felt that whether a person had money or background, it was not necessarily reflected in his clothes. Take the old man Artel for example. His clothes were all handmade, and he didn't even have a brand on them. His mobile phone was even a Nokia phone. Who could tell that he was a wealthy designer? Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen walked in front, and Duan Xueqing quietly followed behind. The 3 of them walked into the private room together. There were already more than 10 classmates in the room. Although some of them were from different grades, they were all direct students. There was still a lot of communication between the two classes. Now that they were mingling together, they didn't feel strange or awkward. Poplar Fruit and the others were also warmly welcomed by everyone. Of course, the one who received the most attention was still Kiki. Kiki was not as lively today. She quietly nestled in her father's arms, only occasionally smiling at everyone. This was not the first time. Poplar Fruit certainly understood the reason. Kiki was about to grow another tooth. Her gums were itchy and uncomfortable, but she was still smiling. That was already a lot of face. Everyone gradually took their seats. Poplar Fruit sat next to Song Jiwen, and Duan Xueqing quietly sat on the left side of Poplar Fruit. She didn't sit with her peers in the same grade. Speaking of which, Duan Xueqing's roommate and best friend, Ma Yonghong, actually worked in Yangcheng. However, unfortunately, she was temporarily sent on a business trip by the company the day before yesterday. This time she couldn't make it. That's not fair. All of you are handsome and beautiful. Hurry up and give one to me. A classmate joked. That's right. A group of people blindly jeered. You all came? At this time, the door of the private room was pushed open. A man in a slim suit walked in. Liang Zhenglin. You brat, you came late. Duan Xueqing and the others in the same grade laughed. Poplar Fruit knew this man called Liang Zhenglin. He heard that his family owned a company. He was a rich second generation. He was generous and often treated his classmates to meals. Therefore, he was quite popular. Since the beginning of the first year, he chased after Duan Xueqing. Poplar Fruit once helped Duan Xueqing to be a shield, but the effect wasn't very good. This guy was the type to pester. However, although he was pestering, he wasn't a loyal person. He also hooked up with other women. On the surface, he said that he was single. In fact, he didn't know how many girlfriends he had changed. Compared to him, Song Jiwen was many times better. Song Jiwen was an open and above-board lover, or former lover. This guy was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was hypocritical. Seeing him appear, Poplar Fruit and Duan Xueqing both frowned. The moment he entered, Liang Zhenglin also saw Duan Xueqing. This was the woman who had caused him to suffer countless losses. Even after so many years, she was still as cold and aloof as before, keeping everyone at a distance. However, this was also why Duan Xueqing attracted him. Fat meat that couldn't be eaten was always the most delicious. Every time Liang Zhenglin saw Duan Xueqing, he had the urge to push her down, tear her skirt, and ravage her over and over again. However, he didn't show it. Xueqing, you're here too? Liang Zhenglin walked over and pretended to be calm. Actually, he had already found out that Duan Xueqing would be coming over this time. Hence, he specially made some preparations. Poplar Fruit could smell the cologne on Liang Zhenglin's body from afar. This made him feel a little disgusted. A man who looked a little feminine was wearing cologne. Long time no see. I didn't bring you any gift. Liang Zhenglin said hypocritically. How about this? His hand naturally reached under the table. When he picked it up, a small bouquet of delicate red roses appeared in his hand. Wow. Not sure if he had found someone to cooperate with him secretly, his performance attracted a few cheers. Flower beauties are even more beautiful. Xueqing, this bouquet of flowers is for you. Liang Zhenglin said. His face revealed a charming smile. I don't want it. Duan Xueqing coldly said these three words. The originally warm atmosphere quickly turned cold. Zhenglin has good intentions. Xueqing, just accept it. Liang Zhenglin glanced at her. A few girls understood and agreed. You want it, you accept it. Duan Xueqing looked at them expressionlessly. Her eyes emitted a cold light. All right. Xueqing doesn't like flowers. I forgot. Liang Zhenglin was used to being rejected. He didn't mind and said, it's my fault. Next time, I'll bring you something better. Come. These flowers are also for the beautiful ladies. While he was giving the flowers to the girls, Poplar Fruit gave Song Jiwen a look. Song Jiwen understood. He stood up and quietly sat on the other side of Duan Xueqing. I say, today none of you are allowed to toast Xueqing. Xueqing can't drink. If you want a toast, come to me. Liang Zhenglin laughed loudly. He turned around and wanted to sit down on the empty seat beside Duan Xueqing. But when he turned around, he saw Song Jiwen sitting there and smiling at him. You. Liang Zhenglin wanted to question Song Jiwen. Wasn't he sitting on the other side? Why did he come over? But he held it in. They were both hedonistic sons. Song Jiwen wasn't afraid of him. He didn't dare to provoke Song Jiwen. After all, Song Jiwen had a powerful father. You. Seeing Poplar Fruit's face on the other side, Liang Zhenglin bitterly shut his mouth. He didn't plan to try to persuade Poplar Fruit to give up his seat. These few years he knew that Poplar Fruit often protected Duan Xueqing. Rather than being disgraced, he might as well be smart and not ask. Everyone, use your votes to smash the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 157. Liang Zhenglin angrily sat opposite to Duan Xueqing and Poplar Fruit. However, he was used to being beaten, so he soon started chatting with the girls next to him. There weren't many male students who majored in language and literature, so there were only 5 people from the 2 grades present. The girls were chattering in full swing. The entire room was so noisy that it was as if there were thousands of ducks. Poplar Fruit's attention was mainly on Kiki. He would chat with the students next to him from time to time, but he didn't talk much. Duan Xueqing was an ice cube, so she naturally wouldn't take the initiative to chat with others. She was still happy that Poplar Fruit asked Song Jiwen to sit over and help her drive away Liang Zhenglin. From time to time, she would look at Poplar Fruit with an imperceptible smile on her face. Everyone is here. Luo Feiyue walked in with the last student and said with a hearty smile, I'll ask the waiter to serve the dishes. Everyone, get ready to eat. Eat what? Everyone is here to see an old classmate. Chatting is the main topic, okay? Fan Fong laughed. When they were in college, she and Luo Feiyue were the most active in the class. Now, she was also mercilessly arguing with Luo Feiyue. Fan, don't eat if you have the guts. Luo Feiyue pretended to be angry and said, We'll eat for you to see if you can bear it or not. As he spoke, he laughed. Everyone also laughed. When Fan Fong was in college, she was famous for being a glutton. Hence, she got the nickname Fan. No one believed that she could bear it. Fan Fong rolled her eyes and hugged Zhou Guanglan, who was beside her, and said, Lanlan, your man is bullying me. You have to help me. When we go back tonight, don't let him go to bed, okay? Zhou Guanglan's skin was shallow. She couldn't bear the teasing and her face immediately turned red. Luo Feiyue laughed. Fan, don't bully my Lanlan. Under everyone's jesting, the side dishes of the hot pot were served one after another. Luo Feiyue called out as he poured plates of beef and enoki mushrooms into the hot pot. In the middle of winter, eating steaming chunks of meat in the hot pot and drinking iced soda and beer was indeed a very delightful thing. However, Poplar Fruit quickly attracted everyone's dissatisfaction. How could a man like him drink Sprite? Liang Zhenglin, in particular, shouted the loudest. Change it to beer. If you're not sincere enough, you'll be fined 10 glasses. Poplar Fruit smiled and waved to everyone. You really can't drink. I have a child with me today. He took Kiki's little hand and waved to everyone. Kiki's cute little face softened the hearts of the girls present. They all said, Poplar Fruit, senior brother. Forget it. It's okay if he doesn't drink it. Luo Feiyue put down his cup and patted the table lightly to attract everyone's attention. He said with emotion, when we graduated 2 years ago, I said that we were all going to be 30 years old. Maybe in a few years, someone would bring a child to the reunion. I didn't expect that day to come so early. He looked at Poplar Fruit and scolded with a smile. Even more unexpected was that the first person to bring a child would be you, Poplar Fruit. And the child is already so big. It can't be that she was just born, right? Yeah, we all thought it would be Xia Min. Fan Fong laughed. Yeah, senior sister Xia Min got her marriage certificate after graduation. Zhou Guanglan said. So, Poplar Fruit, you can drink as punishment, but you have to share your story with us, right? Luo Feiyue laughed. Also, you have to reflect on yourself. Why didn't you invite us to your wedding banquet after secretly getting married? Poplar Fruit smiled and touched Kiki's little head. He said softly, "Actually, there's no special story. Kiki was born in May of 2011, so she wasn't even 1 year old yet. The reason why I didn't invite you to my wedding banquet was that I really wasn't married. Kiki's mother passed away when she gave birth to her." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Zhou Guanglan pulled Luo Feiyue's sleeve and complained, "Why are you asking? You've touched on my sore spot." "It's really nothing." Poplar Fruit laughed. "It's been a long time. Kiki and I are actually living happily together. Don't worry about me, everyone. Come on, let's eat." Okay. I'm stupid. I'll punish myself by drinking 3 cups. Luo Feiyue drank 3 cups of beer in one go. After drinking, his face didn't turn red and his body didn't sway. It seemed that he had drunk a lot of beer in the past 2 years. As they ate, the atmosphere became lively again. "Brother Luo, why did you choose this place today? Let's go to Defugui. There's food and entertainment there. After eating, we can go to the karaoke. I have a membership card." Liang Zhenglin was eating there. He was sweating so much that his hair gel was melting. He couldn't help complaining. Luo Feiyue wasn't annoyed. He smiled and said, "Child Liang, if you want to treat us, we'll go there right away." Then, Liang Zhenglin was interrupted by Fan Fong before he could finish his sentence. "You guys can go there if you want. We're not going to that place," Fan Fong said with a look of disdain. Rich Boss was actually a hotel-level nightclub. There were all kinds of services in the open and in the dark. It was a money-squandering establishment for corrupt officials. Fan Fong had also heard of it. Haha. Luo Feiyue put his arm around Zhou Guanglan's shoulder and laughed at Liang Zhenglin. "Then there's no other way. Child Liang, you'd better stay here today. If you go there, my backyard will be on fire." Without a chance to show off his financial resources, Liang Zhenglin rolled his eyes and pretended not to care as he fiddled with the BMW car key on the table. He said, "By the way, I haven't seen you guys for a long time. I don't know where the senior brothers and sisters here work. Why don't you tell me about it yourselves? If we have business dealings, we can take care of each other." No one refuted him. Luo Feiyue smiled and said, "Okay, I'll say it first. I'm now working in Futian. I sell houses. If you want to buy a house, you can find me. I promise to give you the best price." Futian was one of the top real estate tycoons in Guangdong province. Luo Feiyue's words were very simple, but everyone understood that he was still keeping a low profile. After a few people, it was Song Jiwen's turn. Song Jiwen smiled and said, "I'm just a small civil servant. I don't have much ability. I still need to rely on you to support me in the future." Luo Feiyue knew his background. He laughed and said jokingly, "Leader Song, of course, we have to carry your shoes in the future." Duan Xueqing only said 3 words, "civil servant." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "I'm working again. Now I'm translating things for others at home." "Hey, didn't you work in a foreign trade company before?" Luo Feiyue asked. "I quit," Poplar Fruit said. "That's good," Liang Zhenglin said. "My dad's company often has some documents that need to be translated. It doesn't matter who he does it for. Brother Yanghua, why don't I talk to my dad and ask him to take care of your business?" Haha. He laughed unscrupulously and didn't hide his sense of superiority in his laughter. Chapter 158. Poplar Fruit was not a person who liked to fight and cause trouble, but Liang Zhenglin's tone was really asking for a beating. "You two are orphans and widows. Oh no, sorry, I can't use widows and widowers, haha." Liang Zhenglin thought it was funny and laughed. "Too pitiful, I think. We are classmates. How can I see you in such a difficult situation? It seems that my dad doesn't have much work, probably not enough for you to buy milk powder. Why don't you come to my company?" "You opened a company?" Big Boss Liang, a female classmate, laughed. "No, what big boss, just a small business, just a cosmetics company. It can't make a few million a year." Liang Zhenglin very humbly said to a few girls who were looking at him with admiring eyes. As soon as his voice fell, a few of his close friends started to kick up a fuss, saying that he earned so much money but didn't treat them to a meal and so on. In fact, when Liang Zhenglin talked about his company's business, Poplar Fruit guessed that his company should be the kind of OEM company, especially going to the Pearl River Delta to order domestic cosmetics, then buy a brand in South Korea, and sell it as South Korean cosmetics. Many cosmetic stores on Taobao, not a typo, bought goods from such companies, specializing in fooling women who loved beauty, but were reluctant to spend money on expensive cosmetics. Liang Zhenglin turned his head proudly and said to Poplar Fruit, "I opened a small company. I still need a secretary. But the company is small, senior, you have to be mentally prepared, carrying bags and driving, you have to do it." Maybe he realized that he was a bit too much, so Liang Zhenglin added, "But this is not a problem. The company is still in the development stage. Maybe in a few months, you can be promoted to manager." Poplar Fruit didn't say anything. Liang Zhenglin treated him as a soft persimmon to pinch. Song Jiwen's temper was worse than Poplar Fruit's. He was very unhappy and was about to stand up. At this time, Fan Fong spoke first. She chuckled and said, "Come on, Boss Liang. Just give it a rest." She turned to everyone and said, "You probably don't know yet, right?" "Know what?" Zhou Guanglan asked curiously. "Poplar Fruit is now a great translator. Haven't you seen it before? He's been on the news several times." Fan Fong laughed. Everyone was at a loss. Zhou Guanglan asked, "Ah, when did this happen?" "Didn't Apple's Steve Jobs release a biography a few months ago? It was only released after he passed away. Do you know who flipped it?" Fan Fong kept them in suspense. "Ah, that book? Could it be?" A girl opened her mouth and pointed at Poplar Fruit in disbelief. "It's Poplar Fruit." Fan Fong laughed. "You didn't expect it, did you?" All of a sudden, the room was buzzing with discussion. Fan Fong smiled and continued, "We are all English majors, and we have never heard of anyone who has published a book, but Poplar Fruit published one without saying a word. And it's a big production." Poplar Fruit blushed with shame and said, "Correction, it's not a book, I'm just a translator, and I'm not the only one who flipped it." "Poplar Fruit, you've developed an occupational disease as a translator. You don't say. For us who study languages, translating a book is no different from publishing a book." Fan Fong laughed. "It's really Poplar Fruit." A classmate who was an Apple fan remembered and said in surprise, "I bought that book too. I glanced at it and didn't think much of it. I thought it was someone with the same name." "Oh, I remember too," a classmate echoed. "The young translator who earns 100,000 a month in the newspaper is Poplar Fruit." "What newspaper? What newspaper?" A classmate couldn't wait to ask. "Nandu, you haven't read it?" The classmate replied. I haven't even booked a job. 100,000 a month, that's too awesome." This classmate saw Poplar Fruit's income and clicked his tongue. The room was full of exclamations. Everyone looked at Poplar Fruit in a different light. Many of the students in the room no longer had anything to do with English, but after all, they used to love English. They were all English majors, and most of them had a desire to be a translator. They had fantasized about being able to stand in a large conference and publish a translated book. Even if it didn't happen, the passion was still hidden in their bones. Poplar Fruit's achievement reminded them of their dreams, and they were envious. Of course, there was no need to mention the income. Nowadays, how many people could get a salary of 100,000 a year? Amazing! Luo Feiyue stood up and raised his glass to toast Poplar Fruit. He smiled and said, "You did something that we wanted to do, but didn't dare to do. Old Luo is here to toast you." "Let's talk about the grades in college." Luo Feiyue, who had just been toasted, was a little tipsy. He swept his fingers around and smiled. "Most of the people here are better than Poplar Fruit, including me. I was at the bottom of the class at that time. But now, who dares to say that their English is better than Poplar Fruit's?" Little Qing can. A girl in the same grade as Duan Xueqing deliberately argued. "Little Qing is the first in our grade. Even the teacher said that her English is good." Duan Xueqing received a national scholarship for 3 years in college. If she didn't give it up, she would definitely be recommended for postgraduate studies, or even to a better school. I can't. Duan Xueqing waved her hand and said, "Brother Yang is amazing now. See? Luo Feiyue laughed and said, so poplar fruit is the one who has changed the most. The counterattack of a bad student, and he has become a tall, rich, and handsome guy in an instant. Don't you think I'm right? Everyone was stunned and laughed. Poplar fruit wasn't annoyed by Luo Feiyue's ridicule. He also laughed with everyone. Liang Zhenglin didn't laugh. He sat in a forgotten place and looked at poplar fruit with jealousy. Today he finally brought up the topic of his own company. In the end, the limelight was stolen by poplar fruit. At this time, he could clearly see that Duan Xueqing looked at poplar fruit in a different way. The jealousy in his heart was burning fiercely. He wondered if he should find a few punks to teach poplar fruit a lesson. When they were in school, Liang Zhenglin's fights were just small fights. Although he was rejected by Duan Xueqing many times because of poplar fruit's relationship, he thought, he still didn't dare to find someone to beat up his senior. The influence would be too bad. But now, after Liang Zhenglin opened his own company, it was inevitable that he would have to deal with all kinds of people. The more he saw, the harder and darker his heart became. Now that poplar fruit was ruining his plans, new and old hatred came together. He couldn't suppress the idea of finding someone to teach poplar fruit a lesson. While everyone was talking and laughing, Liang Zhenglin bowed and walked out. After a while he came back. The gloomy expression on his face was gone. Everyone could see that he was proud of himself. The classmate sitting next to him laughed and said, Big Boss Liang, did you just meet a beauty in the bathroom? You look proud of yourself. No way. Haha, let's drink, come on. Liang Zhenglin denied. Looks like it. Quickly punish yourself by drinking 3 cups. The others didn't give up. After a long time, the table was a mess of cups and plates. Everyone was almost done eating and drinking. They all sat on the chairs and chatted as far as the eye could see. In this noisy and hot environment, Kiki fell asleep. Poplar fruit asked Duan Xueqing to help hold her while he got up to go to the bathroom. After shaking off the water, poplar fruit saw Luo Feiyue smoking by the corridor window. Luo Feiyue was the focus of everyone's attention today. His eyes were a little blurred. Seeing poplar fruit, Luo Feiyue offered him a cigarette. Poplar fruit shook his hand and refused. Luo Feiyue laughed and said, People with children are different. You don't smoke or drink. Good man. I didn't smoke before. Poplar fruit laughed. Luo Feiyue thought hard and said, That's true. Sorry, I drank too much tonight. You didn't smoke before, right? Poplar fruit said. Yeah, I didn't smoke before and I didn't drink much either. Luo Feiyue smiled bitterly and said, But I had no choice. In this line of work, I can't avoid touching everything. Seeing poplar fruit's strange look, Luo Feiyue punched him and laughed. It's not what you think. I still adhere to my principles. Even cigarettes, one after another, and liquor after liquor, from Hongpagoda Mountain to Zhonghua. It's all forced by life. Poplar fruit deeply agreed. When he was in the foreign trade company, he also had to drink with customers. Sometimes, halfway through drinking, he would secretly run to the bathroom and vomit into the toilet. When did you and Zhou Guanglan start? Poplar fruit asked, no longer discussing the unsolvable proposition. Senior year. Luo Feiyue said with a little nostalgia. She's in her senior year? No, I'm in my senior year. Poplar fruit said in surprise. No way, I haven't heard anything about it. Haha, we were secretly talking about it back then. Luo Feiyue said proudly, we fought in the tunnel war for 2 years, and only when she graduated did people know about it. Damn, did anyone catch you two in a puppy love? Why were you secretly talking about it? Poplar fruit was speechless. You don't know how good Guanglan's family is. How could a poor kid like me dare to tell others about it? Otherwise, it would be a joke if we broke up. Luo Feiyue smiled bitterly and said, So after I graduated, I have been working hard to get closer to her and give her a happy life. Only in this way, I dared to tell others about our relationship. It's already very good now. Your career is successful, and you have money and a car. Poplar fruit pointed at the car key on his waist. The car was given to me by the company. Luo Feiyue smiled and said, It's mainly because I have a house. Employees in our line of work have a discount when buying a house, and Guanglan's parents happened to support us, so we gathered enough money for the down payment. After the spring festival, we handed over the house. You've already met her parents. It seems like you're going to get married soon. Poplar Fruit smiled. Not yet. Guanglan and I have already agreed to get married in 2 years. Luo Feiyue smiled. His smile was filled with happiness that made others envious. Chapter 159. After Luo Feiyue finished smoking, Poplar Fruit followed him to the private room. Before the door was opened, there was a noise coming from the hall. Where did this wild child come from? A shrill female voice sounded. Don't you look where you are going? What did your parents teach you? Sorry. This child is not sensible. I am really sorry. Brothers, please forgive me. What's the use of saying sorry? Do you know how much this dress costs? If it gets dirty, can you afford to pay for it? Papa. 2 crisp sounds were heard. If you don't know how to discipline your child, I will help you. Poplar Fruit frowned. He was not annoyed by the noise, but because he heard the voice of his former neighbor, Lu Gilin, and Lil Dong's crying. You go in first. I will go and take a look. Poplar Fruit said to Luo Feiyue. Poplar Fruit turned around and walked away. Luo Feiyue thought for a moment, released his hand that was holding the door handle and followed him. How can you hit people? Poplar Fruit walked to the corridor and saw Lu Gilin pointing at them with an agitated look. There were not many guests in the hall. There were only a few scattered tables. The table where Lu Gilin was in trouble was surrounded by 4 or 5 sturdy men and a few coquettish women. Because of the hot pot, the temperature in the restaurant was not low. Moreover, they were eating the steaming hot food. Those men took off their jackets and put them behind the chairs, leaving only a black vest, revealing their strong muscles. They looked like fitness trainers in a gym. Lu Gilin looked agitated. Fong Wenjing pulled the crying Lil Dong to the side and squatted down to look at Lil Dong. Poplar Fruit could see that Lil Dong was covering his face with his hands, revealing a red palm print. Poplar Fruit only took a glance and guessed the cause of this matter. When Lu Gilin and his family were about to leave, Xiaodong ran out and accidentally bumped into the leg of a woman who was standing up. Then, she shook the wine glass in her hand and spilled some wine on her clothes. Actually, it was not much. Looking at her chest, the wet mark was not even as big as a palm. On the contrary, the collar of her clothes was too low, and a little of it flowed into her towering breasts. She was holding a tissue and wiping it while cursing. The eyes of the men at their table were shining. They wished they could become the tissue in her hand and squeeze in. If you don't know how to teach your child, we will help you teach him a lesson. Are you dissatisfied? That unruly big-breasted woman laughed loudly. This old lady specializes in dealing with all kinds of dissatisfaction. Her joke, which had been used too many times, still received a warm response from her companions. Poplar Fruit looked at them laughing unscrupulously and Lu Gilin, who was angry but didn't know how to deal with them. He walked towards them. Brother Lu. Poplar Fruit patted Lu Gilin's shoulder and said, Poplar Fruit? Why are you here? Lu Gilin looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise. Poplar Fruit did not answer. This was not the time for small talk. He walked between Lu Gilin and the table and asked coldly, What do you want? Yo. You want to bully us with more people, right? A man with a crew cut lazily stood up, twisted his head, and his thick chest muscles trembled as he said disdainfully, Let's see who has more people. Another man at the table shouted, which caused another burst of laughter. What do you want? Kneel down for this old lady, kowtow and admit your mistake, and this debt will be written off. The big-breasted woman said with her hands on her waist. You guys are going too far. Lu Gilin clenched his fists and said with hatred. Don't go too far. Isn't it just a child who accidentally touched it? Is there a need to go through so much trouble? Moreover, you even hit the child? Poplar Fruit asked angrily. Who do you think you are? Do we need you to tell us how to do things? The crew-cut man pointed at Poplar Fruit and cursed. He walked over. Poplar Fruit was a little taller than him, but in terms of size, Poplar Fruit was far inferior. The crew-cut man came over aggressively, but Poplar Fruit was unmoved. He looked at the word Shingy on the men's backs and asked with his brows knitted. Do you learn martial arts to bully the weak and beat children? Which master taught you this? Do you have any moral upbringing? Poplar Fruit's words seemed to have stepped on their sore spot. The crew cut man jumped up and cursed as he raised his hand to slap Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit stepped to the side and grabbed the crew cut man's right hand. He coldly said, "You want to hit me because of a disagreement?" In the face of fierce and ruthless robbers, Yonggwa could beat them all by himself. The people in front of him were drunk until their faces were red and their hands and feet were numb. How could he care about them? However, he still wanted to reason with them. Civilized people shouldn't fight and kill. The crew cut man's right hand was grabbed by Poplar Fruit. He tried to pull his hand out, but he couldn't. He felt embarrassed and shouted angrily, "Fuck you." At this moment, he clenched his left hand into a fist and punched Poplar Fruit's ribs. This punch was very forceful and sinister. If it hit, it wouldn't be as simple as a loss of breath. It would definitely break a few ribs. A cold light flashed in Yonggwa's eyes. His right hand shot out like lightning and grabbed the left fist of the crew cut guy. Then he twisted his right fist and made him lose his balance. Then he kicked the crew cut guy and made him fall to the ground. The crew cut man fell to the ground, and the chair behind him hit the table with a loud noise. Poplar Fruit said coldly, "This is your retribution for hitting a kid." Luo Feiyue, who was standing behind Yonggwa, was also stupefied. He had been following behind Yonggwa in a daze. He hadn't even seen clearly what had happened when a fight broke out. Then, Yonggwa didn't suffer a loss while facing this brawny man. Instead, she beat him down. This scene was simply too unbelievable. Was this still the gentle Poplar Fruit he used to know? In fact, Poplar Fruit had fought before. But when he went to university, he stayed in an environment where there were fewer boys and more girls. Naturally, he wasn't so impulsive. So many people thought that a liberal arts guy like Poplar Fruit was gentle and elegant. The man with the crew cut was knocked down. His companions all stood up and pushed their chairs with a clatter. The crew cut man also stood up. His face was gloomy, and his clothes were stained with soup. The big-breasted woman was very sensible. Seeing that the situation was not good, she quickly hid behind them. "Don't fight. Let's talk nicely." The boss of the hot pot restaurant hurried over and said with a bitter face, "Fuck you." The crew cut man was now very angry. He pushed the boss fiercely and staggered. "Oh, you still want to bully me with your numbers?" Poplar Fruit sneered and said back to them. A man who was about the same height as Poplar Fruit, but had bigger muscles than the crew cut man, pushed the crew cut man away and said, "You want to bully me with your numbers? You're not qualified. Let me fight you." Chapter 160. Brother Stone. The crew cut youth said unwillingly, "That's enough." The brawny man called Brother Stone turned around and scolded the crew cut youth. "Don't embarrass yourself if you're not skilled enough." The crew cut youth angrily retreated to the back. The woman he brought with him handed him a tissue to wipe his clothes. The boss cried miserably and begged, "Heroes, can you please move outside and fight? Our small business can't afford to break anything." "Why are you talking so much nonsense?" The crew cut youth cursed. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Brother Stone, right? If you want to fight, let's go outside. Don't disturb other people's business." "I don't deserve to be called Brother Stone. My name is Fule. You're good at fighting, so I'll give you face today. Let's go outside and fight." Fule readily agreed to Poplar Fruit's proposal. In fact, he also felt that this place was too narrow, and he couldn't stretch out his fighting skills. The men and women of the Xingyi Martial School put on their jackets and went outside. Poplar Fruit was about to follow them when Fong Wenjing anxiously pulled Poplar Fruit and whispered, "Poplar Fruit, don't go out." Poplar Fruit patted Fong Wenjing's shoulder and comforted her and Lu Gillen, saying, "Don't worry. Poplar Fruit, don't go out. They have a lot of people." Luo Feiyue was worried that Poplar Fruit would be at a disadvantage, so he also tried to persuade him. Poplar Fruit slightly smiled and shook his head at Luo Feiyue. He didn't say anything and turned around and walked out. Luo Feiyue looked at Poplar Fruit's back as he walked out of the door and into the cold wind. He frowned. He knew that if he went out with Poplar Fruit, he would also be beaten up. Therefore, he decisively ran to his private room. The atmosphere in the private room was very lively, and the students were chatting happily. At this moment, Fan Fong was sitting in Poplar Fruit's seat. She was holding Duan Xueqing's hand and saying something. Duan Xueqing's originally frosty face was stained with a layer of pink blush. Liang Zhenglin, who was sitting opposite her, was about to drool when he saw the shy ice beauty. "Boys, come with me." Luo Feiyue pushed open the door and shouted anxiously. "Poplar Fruit is fighting with someone outside." The air in the room stagnated. Song Jiwen slammed the table, picked up a wine bottle and staggered to his feet. He roared, "What?" Zhou Guanglan ran over and pulled Luo Feiyue's arm as she worriedly asked, "What happened?" The students in the room all had different expressions. Some were worried, some were confused, and some were scared. Only Liang Zhenglin was secretly laughing. "Hee hee, Poplar Fruit, you ruined my business. You're courting death." Liang Zhenglin thought proudly, but when he looked at his watch he also had some doubts. Why did Brother Dafei and the others come so early today? Didn't they say that they would arrive at 10 o'clock? It's not even 9:30 yet. Why did they come early? Luo Feiyue simply explained. "We just met a friend of Poplar Fruit's. Their child was bullied, and Poplar Fruit stood up for them. Now they are fighting outside. There are 5 bullies on the other side. Let's go and help them." "What are you talking about? Let's go," Song Jiwen said impatiently. There weren't many people who responded. A boy was pretending to be drunk, and Liang Zhenglin was also dawdling. He wasn't as agile as Fan Fong and the other girls. Luo Feiyue walked in front with Song Jiwen, while Fan Fong pulled Duan Xueqing and asked her to call the police first. On the other side, Poplar Fruit walked out with them and looked at them with a faint smile on his face. The temperature outside had dropped to 6 or 7 degrees. It was extremely cold. Even the muscular men were shivering and trying to put on their jackets. The other 4 men stood at the back with the women. Fu Lei walked in front of Yang Gua and cracked his neck. His thick knuckles made cracking sounds. His eyes revealed a crazy light. He laughed and said, "Kid, we are from the Gua family's Xingyi martial arts school. Fists and feet have no eyes. Don't blame me for not warning you if you get hurt. It's not too late for you to regret now. Kowtow to my brother and apologize, and this matter will be over." Poplar Fruit smiled indifferently and said, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? If you want to fight, let's fight." Although his expression was calm, Poplar Fruit's eyes were a little excited. He didn't know why, but after showing off his skills at the bank, Poplar Fruit always had the urge to fight with someone again. Practicing martial arts was not as satisfying as fighting. Poplar Fruit turned sideways and put his left hand behind his back. His right palm faced up and slowly stretched out. This wasn't the beginning of Tai Chi. He saw it in a movie and thought it looked pretty cool, so he used it. Fu Lei didn't understand. In all the martial arts he knew, there wasn't a single one that looked weird. Usually 2 hands were in front. Who would only put 1 hand behind their back? However, this posture looked very provocative. He was clearly letting him go first. He was looking down on others. Fu Lei took advantage of the situation. Although he was a little annoyed, his martial arts were still methodical. When he took a step, his feet touched the ground first and his toes were firmly grasped. His lower body was as stable as a pine tree. His body was dignified and didn't sway. When he punched, his wrist was slightly bent and his 5 fingers were naturally separated. He didn't hold his palm tightly and left himself some leeway. Although he was tall and muscular, his punches were not slow. With a wave of his left hand, his right hand, which was as big as a casserole, punched towards Poplar Fruit's head. Chop fist. These 2 words flashed through Poplar Fruit's mind. During this period of time, Poplar Fruit had been studying Xingyi Quan. He was very familiar with this move. Poplar Fruit subconsciously wanted to turn around. The next step was to lead the attack. If the force of the attack missed, then he would use the force to hit someone. However, just as he turned around, Poplar Fruit's heart skipped a beat. He didn't want to use Tai Chi to hit Fu Lei. It was rare to meet someone who learned Xingyi Quan. Why not spar with him? Fu Lei didn't care that his fist was dodged by Poplar Fruit. He immediately changed his move. He bent his knees, raised his left arm, and used his right hand to form a cannon fist. His fist was like a cannonball as it fiercely smashed towards Poplar Fruit's abdomen. If this punch landed, Poplar Fruit would probably vomit out all the food he ate last night. Good. Poplar Fruit shouted in his heart. Fu Lei's fist came quickly, but Poplar Fruit's reaction was even faster. He dodged and took a step to the left. His left fist was aimed at Fu Lei's face. Fu Lei hurriedly leaned to the side and used his left arm to block the attack. He also raised his right arm to protect his head. He was ready to retreat and create some distance. However, how could Poplar Fruit let him retreat so easily? He quickly moved to the right, squatted down, and used his right fist to hit Fu Lei's left face. Fu Lei wanted to say, "Don't hit my face." However, he could only block Poplar Fruit's storm-like attack. He didn't have the time to think about resisting. What's worse is that although Yangguo looks skinny, the strength of her fists is not small. Just one hit will make the arm go numb. He could only cross his right arm to the left to block Poplar Fruit's attack. However, these were all feints by Poplar Fruit. Fu Lei was forced to raise his arms to protect his face. His center was wide open, giving Poplar Fruit a chance to land the final blow. Poplar Fruit beautifully turned around. Using the inertia of turning, he threw a right punch and hit Fu Lei's abdomen directly. Poplar Fruit's combination of punches only took 2 to 3 seconds. It was so fast that no one could react. Fu Lei was already defeated. Fu Lei wanted to hit Poplar Fruit's abdomen but didn't. Now he was hit in the stomach by Poplar Fruit. Not good. Fu Lei was shocked, but he did not feel the pain he had expected. It was as if the fist was pressing on his stomach. It did not sink in, and with a gentle push his body involuntarily flew up and sat down. Poplar Fruit did save his strength at the last moment. He didn't want to fight to the death with his opponent. There was no need to paralyze half of his opponent's body. Therefore, the moment he threw the blast punch, he changed it to the soft force of Tai Chi. However, even so, Fu Lei didn't feel good. After all, he had just eaten a full meal. He felt his stomach churning. It took him a lot of effort to hold it in. He fell on the sidewalk in the middle of winter. His clothes were still there, but his right palm was burning with pain. Fu Lei didn't need to think to know that his skin was scraped. Fu Lei's companions quickly helped him up and glared at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit wasn't afraid. He resumed his fighting stance and looked at them. Motherfucker. The crew cut guy, who kept repeating his catchphrase, took the lead and rushed forward. Poplar Fruit smiled. He didn't need to show mercy to the crew cut guy. Before the crew cut guy could raise his fist, Poplar Fruit sent him to the ground with a chop. Okay, stop fighting. Fu Lei, who finally recovered, pulled the rest of his companions and shouted, "Come back." He wasn't stupid. He knew that Yangguo was being merciful to him. Against an expert who could take him down in a few seconds, his teammates who were only good at scaring people wouldn't even be able to fill the gaps between her teeth. Fu Lei asked his companions to pull the crew cut guy up. He looked at Poplar Fruit and said to his companions, "Let's go." Wait a minute. Poplar Fruit coldly pointed at the big-breasted woman and said, "Your friend still owes us an apology." Fang Wenjing walked behind Poplar Fruit with some fear. She pulled his sleeve and said, "No need." "Why not?" Poplar Fruit said in a loud voice, "People who practice martial arts don't fight for justice. Instead, they bully the weak, women, and children. What did your master teach you?" The crew cut guy, who was supported by his companions, looked at Poplar Fruit with eyes that were about to spit out fire. Fu Lei also stared at Poplar Fruit. He was a little angry, but the situation was better than him. He turned his head and looked at the big-breasted woman and said word by word, "I may apologize." The big-breasted woman was so scared that her face was even paler than her foundation. Seeing the crew cut guy and Fu Lei being easily defeated, she also learned her lesson and didn't dare to delay. She walked out from the crowd and lowered her head to her unfathomable cleavage. She softly said, "I'm sorry." After the apology was made, Poplar Fruit didn't hold on to it anymore. His eyes relaxed a lot. Fu Lei stared at Poplar Fruit and said in a deep voice, "It's a small world. We'll meet again. Let's go." After that, a large group of people turned around and walked away. Poplar Fruit fearlessly looked at their backs. "We'll meet again. I'll beat you up every time you come, hee hee." Chapter 161. Big Brother. After walking for a while, the crew cut guy finally couldn't take it anymore. He pushed his friend away and said to Fu Lei, "Are we just going to let them go like this?" Fu Lei glared at him and said, "What else? The 5 of us together can definitely beat him up," the crew cut guy said excitedly. "If we go, we'll be the ones to be beaten up." Brainless guy. Fu Lei scolded him and explained, "It only took him a few seconds to beat me up, but it took less than a second to beat you up. Are the 5 of us enough for him to play with? Don't you think it's embarrassing enough?" The crew cut guy said unwillingly, "Why don't we go back and tell Senior or the curator? The curator is so powerful he can definitely..." Before he could finish, someone behind him gave him a slap and scolded, "Are you stupid or stupid?" Fu Lei didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at his brainless friend and scolded, "What are you going to tell the curator? Say that we bullied kids and got bullied by adults? Do you think the curator will punish him or you? Then what should we do?" The crew cut guy shouted, "Are we just going to swallow this?" Fu Lei of course didn't want to. He shook his head and said, "We're not as good as them. We can only hide for now and think of a solution when we go back." After Fu Lei and his friends walked out of sight, Song Jiwen and the others came up to them, panting. "Where are they? They bullied my brother." Song Jiwen opened his coat and rolled up his sleeves, waving a bottle of wine as he rushed over. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he hugged Song Jiwen, who was a little out of control under the influence of alcohol. Luo Feiyue led the group of students behind him and said, it's okay. Thank you for your concern." Luo Feiyue looked around curiously and asked, "Poplar Fruit, what's going on?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I talked some sense into them and they apologized. Everything's fine now." Luo Feiyue knew he was drunk, but he didn't believe Poplar Fruit's excuse. A group of martial artists bowed and apologized just because they were reasonable? If that was the case, the world would have been at peace long ago. Poplar Fruit went to find Lu Gilin and his family and said with a smile, "It's okay, it's all settled." He squatted down, hugged Little Dong, touched his face and said, "Little Dong, does it hurt?" There were still traces of tears on Lil Dong's face, but he looked at Poplar Fruit with admiration. He shook his head and said, "Uncle Poplar Fruit, it doesn't hurt. Little Dong is really good." Poplar Fruit kissed him and praised him. "Poplar Fruit, it's all thanks to you today," Fong Wenjing said gratefully. "Sigh. We're friends, so there's no need to be so polite. Since I've encountered this matter, I'll definitely take care of it," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He comforted them, and then said, "You guys go back first. Don't worry if they dare to come up again, just call me." After sending off Lu Gilin and his family, Poplar Fruit helped Song Jiwen zip up his coat, and said with a smile, "I'm really sorry for disturbing everyone's conversation." "It's okay, we're regretting that we came late and didn't see you show off your power, haha." Fanfong laughed. "There's no power, I'm just trying to reason with them," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He saw Duan Xueqing in the crowd looking at him worriedly. He smiled, walked up, took Kiki and said softly, "I've made you worry." Duan Xueqing shook her head, looked at Poplar Fruit with her beautiful eyes, and said in a low voice, "It's good that you're fine." Her conversation with Poplar Fruit was so soft that only the two of them could hear it clearly. Fanfong said with a teasing smile, "What are you guys whispering about? Let's go back," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He didn't answer directly and said, "It's too cold outside." At this time, Liang Zhenglin slowly walked up. He looked at Yang Guo, who was in perfect condition, and his heart was uneasy. Why is he not injured at all? Didn't Brother Dafei come to beat him up? He pulled a girl who was close to him and asked in a low voice. The girl didn't know the situation, so she told him what Poplar Fruit said. Liang Zhenglin was even more confused. Did Brother Dafei retreat just because he talked reason? It can't be, right? Brother Dafei, you took 3,000 yuan from me. You just said a few words and left? Following his classmates to the restaurant, Liang Zhenglin was unhappy. He wanted to find a chance to call and ask what happened. At this time, there was a sudden roar of a motorcycle. Poplar Fruit turned around and saw a few gangsters with dyed red hair holding baseball bats coming down from the motorcycle. Seeing these people, Poplar Fruit felt that something was wrong. The one in the lead had a gold chain around his neck and gold rings on his hands. He was holding a mobile phone and looking at people. "Brother Dafe, it's him." A sharp-eyed gangster pointed at Poplar Fruit and said. Sure enough, they were looking for him. Poplar Fruit's eyes became sharp again. He shouldn't have been merciful just now. He should have punched them a few more times. They just left and now they're looking for him? Fu Lei, who had walked far away, sneezed. He didn't know that he had become Liang Zhenglin's scapegoat. At this moment, Liang Zhenglin had already quietly hidden. He was in a good mood. Brother Dafe had just arrived, and it looked so ostentatious. Quick, go up and beat Poplar Fruit until he can't take care of himself. Who told you to be more handsome than me? Who told you to hook up with the woman I like? Kid, come out. I promise I won't beat you to death. Brother Dafe said arrogantly with a toothpick in his mouth. Knowing that this battle was inevitable, Poplar Fruit stuffed Kiki into Duan Xueqing's arms. Duan Xueqing couldn't hold him back. Poplar Fruit came out from the crowd and said calmly, "What? Do you have something to say?" Under his emotionless tone, there was indeed anger boiling. There were 6 people in front of him with baseball bats as weapons. It seemed that there would be a lot of physical pain today. Poplar Fruit wasn't confident to the point of 1 against 6, but the people behind him were either drunk or girls. Poplar Fruit had to stand up. "What do you have to say? Someone paid for you to stay in the hospital for 2 days. If you come out and let us beat you, you can suffer less." Brother Dafe smiled proudly. He liked to convince people with reason. Squeak. There was another series of breaking sounds, which attracted people's attention. This time there were a few police cars. The police that Duan Xueqing had called for finally came. However, it was better for Shanshan to come late than never. Moreover, they just happened to run into the second group of people. It was really better to come at the right time than to come early. This sentence also applied to Brother Dafe. He couldn't understand why he had just arrived, and the police had also arrived. Brother Dafe dropped his toothpick and was surrounded by a group of policemen. He couldn't run away, so he had to put down the baseball bat and surrender. Liang Zhenglin looked at the turn of events in front of him, stunned. His heart was bleeding. How could it end like this? He didn't dare to show his face, so he secretly hid in the toilet. He was worried that Brother Dafe would see him and give him away. In Yangcheng, Song Jiwen knew people from the Public Security Bureau, and Law Enforcement Bureau. It was hard to say if it was a big matter, but for a small matter like catching a hoodlum, he made a phone call and let the leading policeman listen to the phone call. The rest of the matter could be arranged properly. Poplar Fruit let out a sigh of relief. Today's matter had come to an end. However, Guo Family Xingyi Dojo, Humph, this matter was not over yet. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 162. Poplar Fruit originally planned to find time the next day to talk to the Guo Family Xingyi Martial Arts School, but a series of events disrupted his plans. In the morning, Poplar Fruit carried Kiki, who had just woken up with a grumpy face, and coaxed her not to move and to let her father wash her face. Then the doorbell rang. The first one to react was Goldie. Thanks to Poplar Fruit's frequent calcium supplements, it could now walk unsteadily. Goldie was seen running all the way, with a plastic rope wrapped around its leg. With a series of whooshing sounds, it ran to the door and whined at the door. Poplar Fruit stood up and carried Kiki to the door. He motioned for Goldie to move aside, then opened the door. It was actually his sister, Yang Ping, and brother-in-law, Yang Chongguan. "Hey sister, why are you guys here?" Poplar Fruit was surprised and let them in. After doing business for a few months, Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan's complexions were different. In the past, one of them was in a small company with little business, while the other was in a government guest house in the sunset. Going to work every day was like retirement. There was nothing to look forward to in life, and they felt that they had aged a lot. But now opening a specialty store required a lot of effort, running up and down. Moreover, it was located in the county's transportation hub. The people and things that they saw every day were different, and the vitality of their bodies was suddenly mobilized. especially Yang Chongguan. He had changed his unconfident image of shrinking his shoulders and rubbing his hands when he spoke and did things. Now his hair was combed, and he was wearing a suit and leather shoes. His leather shoes were shiny, and he looked 10 years younger. Yang Ping also began to pay attention to her dressing. Of course, she didn't put on heavy makeup, but she paid more attention to her clothes. At least, she didn't look like a country bumpkin anymore. Today, we are coming to the provincial capital to discuss business with a courier company. Yang Chongguan smiled and said. He and Yang Ping sat on the sofa together. Yang Ping continued. It's still early. We thought that since we haven't been here before, we asked Mom for the address and came to see you. She reached out to take Kiki's hug, but Kiki was still grumpy from being woken up. Other than her father, she didn't want anyone else. Seeing Yang Ping's hand, she turned her head and leaned on her father's neck. She just woke up. Poplar Fruit smiled and said. When Yang Chongguan and Yang Ping came in, it had been observing the two strangers. It then wagged its tail and sniffed around. Yang stretched out her leg and hooked Goldie's body, calling out, Goldie, go play somewhere else. Goldie whooshing and ran. It was its territory, so it turned its legs, turned its legs in turn. As a result, Goldie began to turn its head towards its hind leg. How could it touch it? It was just circling around in the same place. However, one time, it swung its hind legs casually, and the end of the plastic rope was thrown in front of its face. Goldie happily pounced on the rope, and it did catch the rope. However, when the rope pulled on its hind legs, it lost its balance and fell to the ground. Goldie shook its head. It was a little dizzy from the fall. After it stood up again, it began to chase after the plastic rope, and it didn't get tired of it. Poplar Fruit smiled and didn't care about it. He chatted with Yang Ping and Yang Ping. How are you doing now? Is the store open? Ever since he came back home, Poplar Fruit never asked about his sisters and brother-in-law's business. Although he had 50% of the shares, Poplar Fruit was like a shopkeeper who didn't do anything. Once he invested, he didn't care. There was actually a reason for this. Firstly, this was Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan's business. Poplar Fruit didn't want to interfere. Secondly, Poplar Fruit also had his own things to do. Poplar Fruit was really not interested in following up on matters like opening a store. Thirdly, and of course, the main reason was that Poplar Fruit was lazy. There were so many miscellaneous matters, just thinking about it gave him a headache. Yang Ping didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had planned to report to Poplar Fruit, but in the end, Poplar Fruit always just said, "It's okay, you guys handle it." Hearing Poplar Fruit's question, Yang Ping looked at him with a grumbling look. It opened a long time ago. It's been open for a month. Under Yang Ping's introduction, Poplar Fruit found out that in the past 2 months, Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan had already managed the store to be so popular. Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to relationships, but Yang Chongguan firmly grasped the line of the county magistrate. Poplar Fruit was in the provincial capital, but his family had a lot of contact with the county magistrate. Their relationship was much closer than before. With the county magistrate's support, Yang Chongguan not only successfully completed the registration and other procedures, but also opened the store half a month earlier than previously planned. Under the county magistrate's secret instructions, the government's procurement also slightly tilted towards their store. The gifts that the government gave to investors were all provided by the store. This gave them a lot of sales. But the biggest part was the physical sales. The bus station was a good location, so they were destined to have many customers coming to buy every day. The products that Yang Chongguan and Yang Chongguan chose were very exquisite and beautiful. Plus, the prices weren't too expensive, so the tourists were willing to pay for some. "How's your online store?" Poplar Fruit asked. Yang Chongguan said happily, "The online store is already in preparation. We're looking for someone to design the store." "Oh yeah." Yang Ping took out a black plastic bag containing money from her bag and said, "In the first month, we earned more than 50,000. You can split half of it. I brought it all to you." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled. "You don't have to give it to me. You can continue to increase your investment. Now the physical store and online store are all spending money. Don't think about saving money after earning some money. If you have money, you have to think about your next move. He counted with his fingers and explained to Yang Ping. You see, it costs money to make all kinds of connections, right? The store needs to increase the quantity of goods, right? It costs money to open an online store and advertise, right? Also, you should buy a car. Buying a pickup truck to decorate the store and some goods also costs money, right? In addition, our store is popular now, but it doesn't mean that it will be popular in the future, because there will always be people following the trend. Then we have to work on the supply of goods. For example, brother-in-law, you can find someone in the village to open a factory. Let the villagers who don't work outside to come in and help us make the things we want to sell. Make sure that our quality is the best and the price is the lowest. Then, the things we sell will have a continuous competitiveness. Poplar Fruit began to speak at length. Don't underestimate the online store I mentioned. It's the internet era now. People's purchasing power has increased, and a lot of people have increased it to online shopping. Opening a physical store can indeed make money, but it's far less than selling online. So, brother-in-law, when you go back, you have to learn more about the online store industry. This industry is also very knowledgeable. For example, how to make a breakthrough, how to combine and match to meet people's purchasing needs, how to organize promotions or group buying activities to attract more customers. These are all things that you have to learn. How do you know all these? Yang Ping asked dizzily. Didn't you say that you don't care about it? Poplar Fruit ran to the study with a smile. He took out 2 books that he bought and handed them to Yang Chongguan with a smile. Read more books and read more newspapers. Naturally, you will know more about everything. Brother-in-law, those trivial things like looking after the store and greeting customers can be handed over to the employees. If you have time, you have to read more books. Your business isn't as small as we thought before. You have to learn by yourself and improve yourself. This business will only get better and better. The secret of monthly sales from 0 to over 1 million foot, and the marketing strategy of online stores? Yang Ping flipped through the books and asked doubtfully. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and smiled. Actually, what I just told you is mostly memorized from the top. Of course, what I said is all theoretical. As for how you do it, it's still up to you to figure it out. You can just say that you want to be a hands-off shopkeeper again. Yang Ping rolled her eyes and said disdainfully. Poplar Fruit was chatting with Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan when the door was suddenly opened. He turned around and saw Song Jiwen. He probably just woke up. His hair was messy, and his eyes were still blurry. He rubbed his eyes, ignored the people sitting in the living room, and went straight to the kitchen. With a clang, he opened Poplar Fruit's fridge and took out a carton of milk. He bit the plastic of the straw with his teeth and closed the fridge door. Under everyone's gaze, he took a piece of bread from the dining table and threw it into his mouth. Goldie couldn't stand it anymore. It whined and ran in front of Song Jiwen, not letting him go forward. Song Jiwen squatted down and sucked on the milk. He patted Goldie's head and said, Goldie, it's not that I don't want to share with you, but if your father knows that I gave you these things, he'll beat me up. Raising his head, Song Jiwen saw 3 pairs of eyes and a pair of small eyes. Ugh. Sister Ping, why are you here? Song Jiwen scratched his head and greeted her. I'm here to do something. Why are you here? Yang Ping asked curiously. Haha, I live opposite, Song Jiwen laughed. He sucked on the milk, crossed the dam, and sat beside Poplar Fruit. Brother-in-law, good morning. Song Jiwen also greeted Yang Chongguan. Good morning your ass. Poplar Fruit patted his head and scolded him with a smile. Stealing my food and yet you're so righteous. TSK, didn't you buy too much? Song Jiwen said. I'm not eating. Kiki isn't eating. Throw away the rest. Poplar Fruit scolded him with a smile. I bought too much because you come here all day to eat and drink. Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan sat for a while, then they got up and said goodbye. It was almost time. They had to find a courier company to talk about business. On the way, Yang Chongguan said to Yang Ping with a strange expression, Our brother-in-law really doesn't have a girlfriend, right? Yang Ping nodded and said, Yeah, I can see that. No, that's not what I meant. Yang Chongguan said, Poplar Fruit is good-looking, rich and capable. Why does he always hang out with Song Jiwen? They're so close. Could it be that He didn't continue, because Yang Ping picked up her small bag and smashed it on him. Yang Ping chased after him and scolded him with a smile. Could it be your ass? Who told you to think nonsense? You're the Brokeback Mountain. Your whole family is the Brokeback Mountain. I'm not familiar with doing business. There are a lot of things to criticize. Don't take it seriously. I'm begging for monthly votes. I'm begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to hit the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 163. It was fortunate that his sister and brother-in-law had returned after 2 days. Otherwise, they would have bumped into Zheng Yujie. Early the next morning, Poplar Fruit received a call from Zheng Yujie. Through the phone, Zheng Yujie couldn't hold back her excitement. Little Fruit, big sister is coming to Guangzhou. When Zheng Yujie made the call, she was about to board the plane. Before Poplar Fruit could ask her what she was going to do, she had already hung up the phone. Zheng Yujie did not get Poplar Fruit to pick her up. She knew that it would be too difficult for Poplar Fruit to travel all the way to the airport without a car. Thus, all Poplar Fruit had to do was to prepare a meal and wait for her at home. All right, Yang Guo won't go out today. He tidied up the bedroom and obediently moved his pillows and blankets to the sofa in the living room. Then he changed Zheng Yujie's pillows and blankets. Poplar Fruit had once mentioned to Zheng Yujie that he wanted to book a hotel for her. However, Zheng Yujie looked at him pitifully, which made Poplar Fruit panic. In the end, he changed his mind and said, "You can stay for as many days as you want." When Zheng Yujie arrived, it was already past noon. She dragged her suitcase and appeared in front of Poplar Fruit's door with a smile on her face. "Come in," Poplar Fruit said as he took her suitcase. Poking him, Zheng Yujie grumbled. "Why are you pulling a long face? Am I not welcome?" Scratching his head, Poplar Fruit gave her an embarrassed smile. "Nope. I was thinking about a translation problem, and I got a little distracted." "Why are you so late? Is your flight late?" Poplar Fruit asked. "No, there's a traffic jam in the city." Zheng Yujie was referring to Yangcheng. It happened to be the afternoon rush hour, and the taxi she was taking had to pass through the downtown area. No wonder there was a traffic jam. "Wow. Is this Gold?" Zheng Yujie squatted down happily and picked up Goldie, who ran to her feet while wagging its tail. So cute. When the little golden retriever was young, its hair wasn't long. It was whitish yellow and fluffy to the touch. His ears were drooping, and his small eyes looked very innocent no matter how one looked at it. When she hugged it, Goldie would stick out its short little tongue and swing its little tail. It was the best age to act cute. Zheng Yujie had the personality of a queen, and her maiden heart was instantly healed by Goldie's cute appearance. "Are you hungry?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I've already made lunch." The Poplar Fruit was afraid that the food would get cold, so he kept it warm in the pot. He didn't take it out until Zheng Yujie arrived. "How sumptuous." Zheng Yujie looked at the 3 dishes and 1 soup on the table happily. She quickly took off her thick down jacket and washed her hands before eating. "Delicious." Zheng Yujie praised loudly and even patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. "Young man, I haven't seen you for a few months, and your culinary skills have improved again." To be honest, Zheng Yujie had eaten food that was better than Poplar Fruit's. She could casually pick a famous restaurant in Beijing, and the food there was much better than Poplar Fruit's. However, those were all illusory and unreal. They didn't feel like the food that Poplar Fruit prepared for her. There was no taste of home. After eating, Poplar Fruit asked, "What business do you have this time?" Zheng Yujie nodded and said a little gloomily, "Yeah, there's a client that I have to visit. I've been so busy for the past few months that I couldn't even get an extra day off. Aunt Pang even complained that I didn't train enough, and kept adding more work for me. This time, it's because this client is coming to Guangzhou for a lecture, so the venue was changed. That's why I had time to come over." Zheng Yujie hadn't seen Yang Guo for a few months. Although they only called each other once every few days, she still missed him very much. Even when she slept at night, Yang Guo's figure would appear in her dreams. No matter how busy she was, She would take out her phone to refresh Poplar Fruit's Weibo as long as she had some free time. Looking at Poplar Fruit's photos on Weibo, Zheng Yujia's heart would feel a little better. Naturally, most of the photos on Poplar Fruit's Weibo were of Kiki. Zheng Yujia would wait bitterly, hoping to see Poplar Fruit's figure. Even if it's just a side profile, it would be good. So, are you going out in the afternoon? Poplar Fruit asked. Nope, I'm only going tomorrow. Zheng Yujia smiled as she continued. He's holding a lecture in Guangzhou's library, and I intend to pay him a visit after he's done. Do you want to come along? Sure. Poplar Fruit smiled. It's winter, and he's sick of staying at home all day. Occasionally he'll go out and take a look at Guangzhou's library. It's also good to listen to a master's lecture. Then it's a deal. Zheng Yujia happily replied. The next day, Poplar Fruit woke up early for his morning exercise. When he returned, Zheng Yujia was still sleeping in the room. Poplar Fruit smiled. He knew that Zheng Yujia would only sleep in on weekends, so he did not wake her up. He went out to buy some ingredients. There weren't many breakfasts in Guangzhou that suited Zheng Yujia's taste, so today Poplar Fruit only bought soy milk. As for the rest, he intends to make it himself. Grabbing a large bowl, he scooped a few spoonfuls of flour into it before he poured in water, and stirred until it turned into a paste. Adding 2 eggs, he used chopsticks to stir until it turned into a paste. After washing the cucumbers, he cut off the heads, tails, and skin before cutting them into strips. Then, he sliced the ham into 2 strips for later use. When the preparation was almost done, Poplar Fruit lit up the wok and poured in an appropriate amount of peanut oil. After the oil heated up, he poured in the paste. Next, Yanghua held the handle of the frying pan and lifted it above the fire. She gently shook it to allow it to be fully heated. After frying for a while, Yanggua's wrist shook, causing the frying pan to tilt. The thin pieces of egg paste that had been fried into thin slices just happened to flip over and land steadily on the pan. He continued to fry the other side until both sides were golden yellow. Only then did Poplar Fruit take it out of the wok. After frying the first slice, Poplar Fruit fried another slice. After all, it was for 2 people. The omelet was spread out on a large plate and Poplar Fruit sprinkled some meat floss on top. Then he placed the ham and cucumber strips that he had just prepared on top. After that, he smeared some salad dressing on top and rolled it up. This omelet was too long and hard to eat, so Poplar Fruit used a small knife to slice it evenly. After finishing the omelet, Poplar Fruit went to knock on Zheng Yujia's door. After the embarrassing scene in the capital last time, he no longer dared to push open the door and walk in directly. You're up. Zheng Yujia rubbed her eyes and opened the door. There was a heater in the room. She was only wearing a long-sleeve top and a pair of extremely short leggings. They were so short that the long sleeves could cover them. Poplar Fruit saw that under her clothes, her white thighs were completely exposed to the air. He felt his blood boil a little. Zheng Yujia saw it and felt a little happy. She did not say anything and walked to the bathroom to wash up. When she came out, she saw that breakfast was already on the table. The soy milk was not the main point. The beautiful Western-style omelet immediately attracted Zheng Yujia's eyes. She ran over with a smile and bent down. The rich egg aroma assailed her nose. It was still warm, which meant that it was just made not long ago. Zheng Yujia turned to look at Poplar Fruit, her eyes sparkling. Little Fruit, did you make it? Poplar Fruit smiled and made a V sign with his hand. Zheng Yujia covered her mouth and giggled. She secretly wiped away the tears that flowed out. Her heart was filled with sweetness. Chapter 164. After breakfast, Zheng Yujia followed Poplar Fruit to Huaqing Plaza. It was still early, so they took a stroll around the new central axis of Yangcheng. Yanghua had been here countless times, but she still couldn't help but sigh at the government's boldness. They were actually willing to set aside a total of 560,000 square meters of land in this upstart area of the city to build such a huge and magnificent plaza. That's Canton Tower, right? Zheng Yujia said with interest. I saw it on TV during last year's Asian Games. That waist is really thin. Canton Tower was the nickname of Yangqing Tower. Yangqing Tower was an oval-shaped gradually changing grid structure. Its shape, space, and structure were formed by two rotating oval-shaped steel shells. Its lattice structure was loose at the bottom, but it was more dense at the waist. The waist was tightened and fixed like a braided rope, showing a thin waist. Further up, the lattice structure was loosened and supported by tapering tubular structural columns. So it looked like a beautiful woman with a big butt and a thin waist. Do men like women with thin waists? Zheng Yujie suddenly asked. This was indeed an academic question worth discussing. Yang Guo smiled and said, that won't happen. If a woman's waist is too thin, it's not good for her body. Think about it, that's her stomach. If it reaches the size that you can hold, then what about the other organs in her body? But it's good to be a little thin. Exercise more, and there won't be any fat on the stomach. First, it'll look good in clothes. Second, it's also a sign of health. Poplar Fruit analyzed in detail to Zheng Yujie. He didn't know that the angle of his answer was thousands of miles off the mark. His eyes sparkled as Zheng Yujie looked at him in amusement. She turned around and walked away. Secretly, she touched her stomach and muttered in her heart. Recently, I've been sitting in the office so much that my stomach feels like it's going to pop out. This won't do. When I get back to Beijing, I have to do some aerobics often. When they passed by Yangcheng Opera House, Poplar Fruit pointed at it for Zheng Yujie to see. Isn't it cool? The design of this building? Zheng Yujie nodded and said, it is indeed very cool. Just like an alien spaceship. Her description was not quite appropriate. At the very least, spaceships had a sense of symmetry. These two buildings had dozens of faces and dozens of corners, but none of them were symmetrical. They were more like two stones placed on a gentle hill. They were oddly shaped, but they did not lose their roundness. This was designed by the famous designer Zaha. The buildings designed by Hadid had the same style as her other works, surrealism. If one were to open her portfolio, they would see that every design of her works was unprecedented. Even her other works did not have a similar shadow. Its dreamy fluid lines, unique geometric structure, and fantastical appearance won her countless honors. She even won the 2004 Pritzker Architecture Prize, the Nobel Prize in the field of architecture. After passing through the Opera House and crossing the square, Zhang Xian arrived at the Yangcheng Library. While it might not be apparent from up close, if one were to look at it from afar or look at the aerial photos, one would notice that the building's surface and facade formed a Z shape. Then again, with the Opera House as a precedent, Poplar Fruit and the rest weren't impressed by the design of the Yangcheng Library. But it was completely different inside. The building was over 20,000 square meters in size. The north and south buildings were connected by a bridge in the sky. Looking around, one would feel a sense of shock. The tables, shelves, and floor of every floor were all filled with people. From time to time, there would be people walking in and out with big bags of books in their hands. It was as if all the people in Yangcheng who loved to read had gathered together. The library here feels pretty good. Zheng Yujie whispered to Poplar Fruit. It's very modern. Poplar Fruit smiled. The scale is pretty good. But when it comes to books, it's still lacking compared to other libraries. Zheng Yujie nodded her head. She had been to Beijing Library before, and there were over 10 million books there. Even if the quantity wasn't mentioned, just the quality of the books wasn't something the Yangcheng Library could compare to. But it was already pretty good. After all, Yangcheng City wasn't a city with a dense academic atmosphere. To have such a great place to allow the citizens to calm down and recharge their energy, it could be considered a huge gift from the city government. Today, Poplar Fruit and the rest were here for the master's lecture. Poplar Fruit brought Zheng Yujie to the 8th floor of the North Tower. That was the multicultural hall. Aside from collecting related literature, there were also exhibitions, lectures, forums, and other cultural exchange activities. Zheng Yujie managed to get a few tickets, and Poplar Fruit was also allowed in. Naturally, the staff reminded him not to disturb the audience. Although it was a master's lecture, there weren't many people here today since it was a working day. Since they didn't have to sit according to the seating arrangements, Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie found an empty spot and sat down. While waiting for the lecture to start, Poplar Fruit suddenly felt that he had drunk too much water in the morning and needed to go to the toilet. After informing Zheng Yujie, She carried Chi-Chi on her back and headed to the toilet. The reason why he didn't ask Zheng Yujie to look after her was because Poplar Fruit had already tried. Kiki was still the same old Kiki. If she was in someone else's arms and Poplar Fruit walked out of her sight, she would immediately start crying. Only Fang Beibei could calm her down. This made Poplar Fruit feel helpless. Speaking of Fang Beibei, Poplar Fruit hadn't seen her for a week or two. Recently, she had been busy with her final exams, so Poplar Fruit tactfully didn't disturb her. Poplar Fruit. After walking out of the toilet, Poplar Fruit heard a familiar voice. When he turned around, it was actually Uncle Jean. Uncle Jean had changed his appearance from shorts and slippers to a suit and leather shoes. His aura had greatly increased. Uncle Jean. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Why are you here? Are you here for the lecture too?" "Haha, I'm here for the lecture." Uncle Jean patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, That's not right. Isn't Mr. Mo Yan's lecture today?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "Yes, our education department and the library jointly organized it." Uncle Jean smiled and said. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood and said with a smile, "Then leader, are you here to take charge of the lecture today?" He had a good relationship with Uncle Jean, so it wasn't a problem for him to make a joke. "What leader?" "Haha, I'm here to take a look. I'm here to represent the education department to welcome Mr. Mo Yan." Uncle Jean smiled and said, Mr. Mo Yan wasn't famous in the country, but he was famous abroad. A few of his novels received a great response in Europe and America. For example, Red Sorghum was not only named as the best novel in the world in 1993, it was also listed as one of the top 40 literary classics in the past 75 years in 2001. He also received a lot of international awards, such as the French Jules Prize, Battalion International Literature Award, Italy's Lino Nino International Literature Award, Japan's Fukuoka Asian Literature Award, and so on. Last year, he also received the Mao Dun Literature Award, which he had failed many times before. It was the most honorable literature award in China. Naturally, he deserved to be welcomed by a provincial leader like Su Kai-jin. Poplar Fruit knew Mr. Mo Yan very well, mainly because he had read a lot of his works when he was translating Chinese into English. His translation of Explosion by Jane_Wickery and Duncan_Hewitt, as well as the translation by the famous American sinologist Howard_Goldblatt, Chinese name Gu Haowen, were all important materials for Poplar Fruit to study. Director Su. Poplar Fruit was happily chatting with Uncle Jean when a staff member ran over and said, "A foreigner is here." "A foreigner is here. Just a foreigner is here. What's there to be surprised about?" Uncle Jean said unhappily. "And he's in such a hurry." "No, he's here to look for Mr. Mo Yan. This is his business card." The staff member handed it over. "What does it mean?" Uncle Jean took the business card and glanced at it, but he didn't understand. Poplar Fruit went over, looked at it, and said, Svenska_Akademien, this is Swedish. It means Swedish Academy. Uncle Jean looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise and said, "You know Swedish?" The staff member said weakly, "Director Su, on the back, it's English." Uncle Jean flipped to the back, and the words Swedish Academy were written where the word Svenska_Akademien was written. However, Uncle Jean still didn't understand it. After graduating from school for so many years, he had already returned his English to his teacher. He handed the business card to Poplar Fruit and said, "Poplar Fruit, take a look." Poplar Fruit glanced at it and said, "The owner of this business card is Professor Anderson, an academic committee member of the Swedish Academy of Arts. He's at the same level as the department head." "Did he say why he's looking for Mr. Mo Yan?" Uncle Jean asked. A professor from a foreign university came to look for Mo Yan. It wasn't common, but it wasn't strange either. "Yes, but we didn't understand." The staff member gave a bitter smile and said, "His English pronunciation is too weird. I told you to work hard on your English listening, but you just laughed and brushed me off. See, you'll be more anxious when it's time to use it." Uncle Jean scolded them with disappointment. "Call the Foreign Affairs office and ask them to find 2 interpreters." Uncle Jean waved his hand and said, The staff member nodded, then turned and ran. Before he could run far, Uncle Jean stopped him again. Wait! Uncle Jean turned around and looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit felt a little uncomfortable under his gaze. What's wrong? He asked with confusion. Why are you looking at me like that? Uncle Jean clapped his hands and laughed out loud. I'm so silly. Why did I have to go to the farthest place? I forgot that your English is good. He held Poplar Fruit's arm and walked to the staff member while saying smilingly, Come on, Lee, Poplar Fruit is here today. You don't need to find someone else. Poplar Fruit, do us a favor and translate for us. Poplar Fruit gave a bitter smile and said, Uncle Jean, is this how you find men? I can't do it today. My friend is waiting for me in there. And you see, I'm carrying a kid. It's too embarrassing for you to look like this. Uncle Jean glared at him and said, What's wrong with that? It's just a temporary rescue. It's not a big occasion. Just talk to that professor for us. How long will it take? Your friend is in there? Tell him to come out. I'll take you to the front row so that you can see him more clearly. All right, it seemed that he wouldn't be able to run away. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to follow Uncle Jean out. Chapter 165. Poplar Fruit didn't even have time to say hi to Zheng Yujia before Uncle Jean pushed him to the entrance of the library. A blonde foreigner was standing by the entrance of the library. Poplar Fruit saw him, and understood why the staff of the Department of Education made such a big fuss. This seemingly elderly foreigner was well dressed from head to toe. He wore an elegant little top hat, and carried a bright red crutch in his hand. He looked very much like a European nobleman in the Middle Ages. Soon, Poplar Fruit understood what Li meant when he said that the foreigner's accent was hard to understand. How was that hard to understand? That was lame. His English grammar wasn't standard, and he even mixed in the masculine and feminine suffixes. Poplar Fruit felt that even a primary school student in China could speak better English than him. Poplar Fruit had to guess to figure out what he meant. Once Poplar Fruit spoke in English, his fluent American English, he immediately attracted a lot of admiring gazes. He said that he's a representative from the Swedish Academy of Arts. He wants to talk to Master Mo Yen about something important in private. Poplar Fruit translated for Uncle Jean in a low voice. Ask him if he can tell us what it is about, said Uncle Jean. Poplar Fruit translated for Uncle Jean in English. However, Poplar Fruit spoke a little too fast, and Professor Anderson didn't understand him. In a hurry he said in Swedish, Sir, please speak slowly. Only then did he realize that he had just spoken in Swedish. Then he used his broken English to say it again. Poplar Fruit was amused. He murmured to himself, Sir, you don't need to say anything. I understood what you said just now. If you switch to English, I'll have to guess again. Of course, he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he smilingly said to Professor Anderson in Swedish, Mr. Anderson, our supervisor wants to know what you want to talk to Mr. Mo Yen about. Oh, so you know Swedish. Thank God. I don't have to speak English anymore. Professor Anderson's mouth became more flexible as he spoke a long string of Swedish words. He complained to Poplar Fruit about the difficulty of learning English. I know French, German, Spanish, and a little bit of ancient Greek, but I don't understand English. Their grammar is too weird. Poplar Fruit believed that 90% of the Chinese people would agree that English was difficult to learn. However, it would be hilarious if he complained that English grammar was weird. The Swedish grammar is the disgusting one, okay? Poplar Fruit recalled the time when he was learning Swedish. He had a headache when he saw the changes in Swedish vocabulary. Swedish nouns, adjectives, and verbs could all be changed. Nouns were divided into genders. They weren't divided into masculine and feminine like in French. Instead, they were divided into gender, non-gender, and gender. Most nouns were gender, but there were no rules to the gender of nouns. They had to be memorized. However, some ancient phrases and ceremonial words retain the yin and yang distinction of the gender nouns in ancient Swedish. Adjectives were more complicated. They had gender and number categories, as well as definite and indefinite forms. The definite article of an adjective was placed before the adjective. Similarly, personal pronouns had gender and number changes. Verbs didn't have person changes, but there were grammatical categories like tense, and so on. Compared to that, English was much simpler. Perhaps this old man could accept slightly more complicated grammatical changes. Poplar Fruit didn't point it out. He chatted with him for a while before asking the same question again. I'm here to discuss with Mr. Mo Yen about his nomination for the Nobel Prize in Literature. Professor Anderson gently pulled his top hat and made a polite gesture to show his respect. Poplar Fruit conveyed this sentence to Uncle Gene in a low voice. Uncle Gene immediately became excited. He pulled Poplar Fruit to the side and whispered, "Really? Is this news accurate? Is Mr. Mo Yen really going to win the Nobel Prize in Literature?" Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at him and whispered, "He's not going to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. It's just a nomination." Uncle Gene didn't understand, but Poplar Fruit knew about encyclopedic knowledge. The Nobel Prize in Literature wasn't decided so easily. Every September, the Nobel Prize in Literature Committee would send out invitations for nominations all over the world. Of course, not everyone had the qualifications to make a nomination. Those who could make a nomination were academicians from the Swedish Academy of Literature and other countries, literature professors and linguistics professors in higher education institutions, Nobel Prize winners, and chairmen of various countries' writers' associations. Then, at the beginning of February of the following year, the nominees had to submit an official nomination letter with relevant information about the candidate, such as the original work or translation. Otherwise, they would be considered to have given up or be moved to the next year's list. After that, there would be the confirmation of qualifications. The committee would clear out the nomination letters that weren't qualified. In the end, there would be a long list of about 200 people. Then there would be the primaries. The primaries would eliminate most of the candidates based on various criteria. By April, there would only be about 20 people left on the list. It's only towards the end that we really enter the PK voting phase. Poplar Fruit said with a wry smile. Then what's the nomination now? Uncle Gene asked. It's still the initial phase. It hasn't even reached the qualification verification stage. Poplar Fruit explained. Uncle Gene suddenly asked, "How trustworthy do you think this person's words are?" Poplar Fruit thought for a moment and said, "I think it's very trustworthy. His Swedish is very authentic. Many of his words are quite classical. That's very rare nowadays. At least, the identity written on his name card shouldn't be wrong." Previously, when faced with the importance of this nomination, Yanghua made a judgment based on the knowledge in her mind. But in the end, the older the ginger, the spicier the ginger. As a veteran in the officialdom, Uncle Gene could see that it was extraordinary at a glance. He said, "No, if it's just a simple nomination, Sweden wouldn't send such an important person over. They sent a professor to talk to Master Mo Yen face to face. That means they value Master Mo Yen very much. This is definitely not a small matter," Uncle Gene said with certainty. Hearing his analysis, Poplar Fruit nodded in realization. Indeed, this didn't make sense. The committee of the Nobel Prize in Literature was so mysterious and arrogant. Why would they send someone over just because of a nomination that wasn't important? Uncle Gene said seriously, "Don't tell anyone about what happened today. Don't let the staff know either. If the media exposed it in advance, it would be difficult for us. Because in history this might be the closest we've ever been to a Nobel Prize." Chapter 166. Uncle Gene instructed, "Poplar Fruit, keep him under control later. You accompany him to sit under the stage for a while. The lecture will continue as usual. I'll arrange for him to talk with Master Mo Yen face to face after the lecture. You can continue to translate for him then." Uncle Gene patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said with a smile, "Thank you for following him today. It's not easy to find someone who understands Swedish at this time. This is a big deal. I have to report it to my superiors first." Poplar Fruit nodded and turned around to continue the conversation with Professor Anderson. Uncle Gene grabbed Poplar Fruit again and said, "When you talk to him, remember to tell me if you find anything new. Don't tell the staff in detail." Uncle Jean went aside to make a call, while Poplar Fruit walked back to Professor Anderson. Seeing Poplar Fruit, Professor Anderson was very happy. In this place, the only person he could communicate with smoothly was Poplar Fruit. In fact, he was a little regretful. Before coming here, he shouldn't have tried to be brave. He should have asked the embassy for a translator who understood Swedish. He didn't expect that his English couldn't be understood by others. Poplar Fruit smiled politely at him. Mr. Anderson, we're very happy to have you here. He pointed at the poster by the door and continued, but as Mr. Mo Yan's lecture is going to start soon, I wonder if you'll mind if we arrange for you to talk to Mr. Mo Yan in detail after the lecture? Professor Anderson smiled. I don't mind at all. I'm always free today. I'd like to ask if I can go in and listen to the lecture. I don't have a ticket. Poplar Fruit smiled. This request was so simple that he could answer for the staff here. Of course, no problem. You can come with me. Poplar Fruit turned around to look for Uncle Jean. He wanted to talk to him, but Xiaoli quickly walked up and whispered to Poplar Fruit, Mr. Yang, Director Su just told me that you can tell me directly if you need anything. Poplar Fruit said, I need to take this distinguished guest to the Multicultural Center for a lecture. Do you have any extra tickets? Xiaoli smiled and said, No need for tickets. I'll take you in. Following Xiaoli, Poplar Fruit brought Professor Anderson to the 8th floor. They went around the ticket gate and walked in through the front door. Xiaoli pointed at the front row and said, The front row seats are all reserved. You guys can sit anywhere you want, but it's best to leave the middle row empty. Before Poplar Fruit could say anything, Professor Anderson waved his hand and said, No, we don't want to sit in the front. Under Poplar Fruit's confused gaze, Professor Anderson smilingly explained, Wait a minute, I won't be able to understand Mr. Mo Yan's speech, and I'll need your help to translate. So in order not to disturb Mr. Mo Yan, we'd better sit in the back where there are fewer people. Alright, he had to translate it himself. However, Poplar Fruit wasn't against it. On the contrary, he was eager to give it a try. He had never done simultaneous translation before, let alone in Swedish. Such a difficult challenge was too exciting. Poplar Fruit explained to Professor Anderson, then led him to the back. Zheng Yujie couldn't wait any longer. Poplar Fruit had been gone for 10 to 20 minutes. Could he have gotten lost? If she wasn't worried that Poplar Fruit wouldn't be able to find her when he came back, she would have gone out to look for Poplar Fruit. She sat on the chair and looked around, her head drifting to the back door from time to time. At that moment, she heard footsteps. She turned around and saw Poplar Fruit winking at her. However, Poplar Fruit didn't stop. He made a hand gesture to calm her down, and continued walking. Zheng Yujie was confused. She stared blankly as Poplar Fruit carried Kiki to the back, and sat down with a foreigner. Poplar Fruit held Kiki in front of him and said to Professor Anderson, Mr. Anderson, because you came in a hurry, we weren't prepared to welcome you. Today, I brought my daughter out. Do you mind if I carry my daughter? If he said that he minded, Poplar Fruit would take his daughter away immediately. He didn't want to serve such a proud foreigner. Professor Anderson smiled kindly at Kiki, then said to Poplar Fruit, I don't mind. My granddaughter has grown up. She's as cute as your daughter. Poplar Fruit smiled and started chatting with him. The advantage of encyclopedic knowledge was that Poplar Fruit could chat with anyone, especially in the field of literature. He had read too many literary works. The works of the great masters who won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Lucrezio's War, Hector Miller, River Run, Walking the Line, Mario Balotelli, Mario Vargas, Los's Greenhouse, and so on. Poplar Fruit could break out some sentences from them and chat with Professor Anderson. Poplar Fruit could also talk about the style of each famous writer, the outstanding characteristics of each genre, and even the twists and turns of the selection of other international literature awards in recent years. What surprised Professor Anderson even more was Poplar Fruit's familiarity with Swedish literature. Selma Lagerlöf, the pride of Swedish literature. Poplar Fruit also had a deep understanding of several of her representative works. This made Professor Anderson proud, and he also began to admire Poplar Fruit's erudition. Professor Anderson sighed. I have never seen a young man as outstanding as you. If you didn't say that you had never been to Sweden, I would have thought that you were a student of one of the professors in our Swedish academy. Poplar Fruit smiled. I'm a translator. Of course, my love for literature also motivates me to keep learning. I hope that one day I can become a person like your country's Mr. Goran Malmqvist, and contribute to the spread of culture throughout my life. When Professor Anderson mentioned Majuaran, he was filled with respect. Majuaran's background was much greater than his, and he had countless titles. Professor and Dean of Sinology in the Chinese Department of Stockholm University, Academician of the Swedish Academy of Literature, President of the European Sinology Association, and a famous sinologist. More importantly, he was one of the 18 lifetime judges for the Nobel Prize in Literature. He devoted his life to the study of sinology. Many of China's classical works, such as the Book of Songs, Analects of Confucius, Mencius, Records of the Grand Historian, Water Margin, Journey to the West, etc., were only known to the West after he translated them. Although Professor Anderson was younger than Majuaran, he had also admired Majuaran for a long time. Of course, Poplar Fruit's admiration for Majuaran could also be considered as a compliment to his country's culture. Swedish literature hasn't been popular in recent years, and it wasn't easy to find a soulmate in the distant East. Professor Anderson happily said to Poplar Fruit, I think that if you have the chance, you must come to Sweden to take a look. I believe that Sweden has more culture that you will like. Poplar Fruit deeply agreed. It was better to travel 10,000 miles than to read 10,000 books. If he had the chance, he really wanted to travel around to study. When the lecture was about to start, Poplar Fruit glanced at Zheng Yujie, who was looking over from time to time. Shit, I forgot about her. After excusing himself from Professor Anderson, he ran over to Zheng Yujie's side. What are you doing? Zheng Yujie was a little annoyed as she pinched Poplar Fruit's arm and said, You left me here for so long. No, I was caught. Poplar Fruit explained the cause and effect of the matter. He hesitated for a moment, looked around and said to Zheng Yujie in a low voice, I'm telling you, don't tell anyone, and don't let anyone publish it in the newspaper. He also secretly told Zheng Yujie about the analysis of the Nobel Prize in Literature Committee's visit to Mo Yen and Uncle Jean. Tise. Zheng Yujie pursed her lips and said, I thought it was something big. You think I don't know? I'm here this time because I heard that many people think that Mo Yen will win the prize this year. Although there are people who think that he will win every year, I think that this is an opportunity that is worth fighting for. Poplar Fruit was confused and asked, No way, how come no publishing house wants his book? He has been famous for a long time. Not for the domestic publishing rights. We want to do overseas publishing, Zheng Yujie said in a low voice. I remember that you don't have an overseas publishing department. Poplar Fruit asked, Are you going to add a new department? Zheng Yujie said, No, but this is an opportunity. If we can get the overseas publishing rights of Mo Yan's book, if we do it well, it might be possible. My grandfather always told me that we can't keep our culture to ourselves. If we don't go out, we won't have a future. Poplar Fruit nodded in agreement. Hurry up and go accompany that Swedish professor. Zheng Yujie pushed him and said, The lecture is about to start. What about you? Poplar Fruit asked. You don't have to worry about me. I'm not a 3-year-old kid. I don't need someone to accompany me to a lecture. Zheng Yujie said that, but she was still very happy. The unhappiness that was ignored just now was swept away. Okay, aren't you going to see Mo Yen later? After the lecture, come with me. I'll tell Uncle Jean, Poplar Fruit said. Okay. Back to Professor Anderson's side, the lecture had just begun. Under the introduction of the host, a middle-aged man, who was about 5 feet and 70 centimeters tall, walked up smilingly. That was Mo Yen. In terms of looks, no one would believe that he was the kind of person who could write such a profound local literature. However, such a man, who looked like a village secretary, had written such a great work like Red Sorghum. Poplar Fruit carefully looked at him. He felt that under that average-looking face, there was a profound and strong vibe. That was because he had accumulated enough knowledge and achievements to a certain extent. Poplar Fruit thought that he was still thousands of miles away from that. Mo Yen started talking. Poplar Fruit calmed himself down and focused on translating for Professor Anderson. After all, Professor Anderson was a foreigner. Mo Yan's lecture involved a lot of local culture and quoted many examples from his own works, so he didn't quite understand it. Seeing that, Poplar Fruit explained the difficult parts to Professor Anderson based on Mo Yan's lecture and his own understanding of Mo Yen. Fortunately, Mo Yen didn't talk fast, so Poplar Fruit had enough time to translate for him. Professor Anderson could finally finish listening to the lecture to his heart's content. Chapter 167. The lecture ended with a round of applause. Professor Anderson also stood up and clapped. Poplar Fruit saw Uncle Jean waving at him from the front row. He smiled and said to Professor Anderson, "Mr. Anderson, let's go together." Poplar Fruit led Professor Anderson downstairs. When he saw Zheng Yujie, he motioned for her to follow behind. To be honest, Poplar Fruit was a little nervous. He didn't know if he would be scolded by Uncle Jean if he brought Zheng Yujie down. After all, this was a relatively serious occasion. However, he was obviously overthinking. Poplar Fruit approached. Uncle Jean saw Zheng Yujie at a glance. He said in surprise, "Little Yujie? Why are you here?" Without waiting for Zheng Yujie to answer, he waved his hand and said, "I'll tell you later." He turned to Poplar Fruit and said, "The director of our Department of Education is here, and the leader of the Department of Foreign Affairs is also here. Now I'll leave this to them. You tell Anderson." Poplar Fruit looked up and saw a few people with extraordinary temperaments walking over, so he relayed Uncle Jin's words to Professor Anderson. Professor Anderson was stunned for a moment, but soon nodded. It wasn't that he had never dealt with the government, and this was very common. Poplar Fruit was about to follow, but Uncle Jean stopped him and said, "No need, they brought a translator. Thank you for just now." Zheng Yujie said unhappily, "Uncle Su, you're getting rid of the donkey after it has left the millstone. You can't be like this." Uncle Jean smiled bitterly and said, "I don't want to either. But that's my big boss. Today's matter is unusual. My big boss and the leader of the Foreign Affairs Department are all here. They seem to be taking this matter very seriously, so they even sent the translator over." "Then why did you look for Poplar Fruit in the first place?" Zheng Yujie blamed Poplar Fruit for leaving her aside on Uncle Jean. "There are so many people who know English. Any one of them would do. Why Poplar Fruit?" "Because the foreigner spoke Swedish," Wang Yao said. Poplar Fruit explained on behalf of Uncle Jean. He was very calm. After all, it was inappropriate for an outsider like him, who was carrying a child and wearing casual clothes, to be present at such an important diplomatic occasion. "You can speak Swedish?" Zheng Yujie asked in surprise. She had seen the books in Poplar Fruit study. She did not expect that Poplar Fruit had even learned Swedish. Uncle Jean finally came back to his senses. "Do you know each other?" he asked with confusion. "Yeah," Zheng Yujie responded quickly. "Poplar Fruit is my good friend, and also my partner." "Oh." Uncle Jean was enlightened. "I remember now. You're in Dongxin now. Poplar Fruit's book is published by Dongxin too." As Poplar Fruit was a little confused about her relationship with Uncle Jean, Zheng Yujie briefly explained to Poplar Fruit. "Uncle Jean used to work for my grandpa. To me he's an uncle." Uncle Jean looked at the two of them smilingly and said, "You're right. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit and I aren't brothers. Otherwise, our relationship would be messed up again." Mo Yen, Professor Anderson, and the director of the education department weren't too far away. Some of their conversation could be heard. Zheng Yujie nudged Poplar Fruit's hand and asked with a low voice, "How's his translation?" "Not bad," said Poplar Fruit. "Tell me the truth." Zheng Yujie nudged Poplar Fruit's hand. That little movement of hers caught Uncle Jin's. He was a little surprised, but didn't point it out. "It's a so." Poplar Fruit said, "It's dry." He cut out many of the modifiers himself. But thankfully, he managed to translate the general idea. "You're in a hurry to find a Swedish translator. That's not bad." Uncle Jean laughed. "He's not as good as Poplar Fruit anyway." Zheng Yujie was still thinking about that. Yujie, what are you doing in Yangqing City? Uncle Jean changed the topic. I'm here for Mr. Mo Yen, said Zheng Yujie. We want to get the overseas copyright of his book. He still has the overseas copyright of Mo Yan's book? Didn't he just say that his book has been translated? Uncle Jean asked confusedly. We've already sold the English translation, but we still have copies in other languages, said Zheng Yujie. Poplar Fruit and the others chatted for a while. Then the Swedish translator walked over and looked at Poplar Fruit with a weird look, asking, Are you Mr. Leon? He said Leon's name in Swedish. Poplar Fruit paused briefly, then nodded and said, I am. My Chinese name is Poplar Fruit. Professor Anderson asked for you, the translator said to Poplar Fruit. He nodded and followed Uncle Jean. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to follow. The director of the education department had a weird look in his eyes when he saw Yanghua holding a child. He glanced at Mo Yen and said, Mr. Leon, right? What's your Chinese name? Poplar Fruit gave his name, then looked at the group of people confusedly. They all fixed their eyes on him, which made him feel weird. Mo Yen smiled and said, Just now Professor Anderson recommended you to me. He said that you're the best person to translate my book. Ah. Poplar Fruit was even more confused. Translate his book? What was going on? Wasn't he just here to talk to Mo Yen about the nomination? Here's the thing, the director of the education department explained. Just now, Professor Anderson said that most of Mr. Mo Yan's works haven't been translated into Swedish. He hopes that Mr. Mo Yen can provide a few Swedish translations of his representative works, so that the committee can review them. We don't have much time, and we don't have many Swedish translators in our country. Poplar Fruit turned and asked Professor Anderson, Thank you for your recommendation. But why me? Professor Anderson said to Poplar Fruit smilingly, Because you have a deep understanding of literature. Not only are you familiar with Swedish literature, but you also have a deep understanding of Mr. Mo Yan's works. I noticed that when you translated the lecture for me just now. While Professor Anderson was talking to Poplar Fruit, the Swedish translator translated the lecture for the others as well. Even so, the director of the education department said to Mo Yen, This is a serious matter. Poplar Fruit is so young. I think we need to think about it carefully. Mo Yen didn't respond. Instead, he looked at Poplar Fruit and said smilingly, Just now Professor Anderson said that you know a lot about my works. Can you please answer a few questions of mine? Before Poplar Fruit said yes, he picked a few questions to test Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit answered all the questions frankly. He also expressed his admiration for Mo Yen, especially when he read the short story called Boat. That short story reminded him of the short stories written by Mr. Shen Kongwen in the 1930s. Those short stories were all concise, yet bold and imaginative. After hearing the questions, Mo Yen gave Poplar Fruit a meaningful glance. He pondered for quite a while, then raised his head and said, Poplar Fruit, I would like to invite you to translate my novel Life and Death Fatigue. Are you willing to do that? Please vote for me, recommend me. Everyone, please use your votes to support me. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 168. Poplar Fruit was stunned when he heard that. He couldn't believe it. Mr. Mo Yen wants me to translate his award-winning work, Life and Death Fatigue? Although it's not his best work, it's one of his most representative works. However, before Poplar Fruit could answer, the director of the Department of Education pulled Mo Yen to the side and said in a low voice, Mr. Mo Yen, translating isn't a small matter. Don't you think we should consider it carefully? The director of the Department of Foreign Affairs also walked over and nodded in agreement. Yeah, Mr. Young looks very young. I think we should find someone more experienced to do this. I'll write a report and ask the department to contact an old Swedish professor. There should be a lot of experts who know Swedish, said the director of the Department of Education. Other than Mr. Yang, we have a lot of better choices. Mo Yen smiled. He thought to himself, if there were better choices, would I have waited until now? Previously, in order to apply for this award, He found Professor Ma Yueran under the recommendation of a friend. He rarely helped other people translate works for the Nobel Prize, but he had a lot of praise for Mo Yen, so he took the time to translate Sandalwood Punishment and Red Sorghum for him. One was long and one was medium length, which was already very helpful. There were only 2 universities in the country that offered Swedish majors: Beijing International Studies University and Shanghai International Studies University. Both of them only recruited students once every 4 years, which showed how rare Swedish talents were in the country. How could it be easy to find a suitable translator? In the past, he didn't think he had much hope in applying for this award, so after Professor Ma Yueran translated those 2 works, he didn't continue to look for someone else. But now it seemed that there was still hope, and it was not small. When he heard this news, his heart, which had been calm like an ancient well, began to ripple again. The Nobel Prize was a prize that no one in his country had won in 100 years. It was very attractive to Mo Yen, so he wanted to fight for it again. It was no longer appropriate to talk to Professor Ma Yueran at the moment. Besides, it wasn't good to keep bothering him like that. So Mo Yen had to find someone else. Naturally, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had to find people to help through them. This line was very important. However, he had many good works such as Fatigue of Life and Death, Frog, Master is Getting More and More Humorous, and other short and medium novels. They were all good. It was impossible to find enough people to translate all of them. Moreover, Mo Yen was worried about handing a work like Life and Death Fatigue to other people. If the translation was substandard, wouldn't all his efforts be in vain? Obviously, the director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs knew more about language majors than the director of the Ministry of Education. When he heard the director of the Ministry of Education say many, he pushed him and said with a bitter smile, "No. There might be a few old professors, but not many in the country can speak Swedish. In our department, only Lu knows how to speak Swedish. I don't think you can find more than a few in the entire Guangdong province. But we still need to find talents in this field," said the director of the Ministry of Education in an official tone. "This is related to the reputation of our country. It's not too much to do it with the power of the whole country." The director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs murmured in his head, "Easy for you to say. Can you mention the word country when you enter the central government?" Mo Yen said, "How about we also find out about Yang's situation? Let's see if he's the real deal. If he's not, we won't choose him, right?" The director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs thought that it was a good idea. He waved his hand and called over the Swedish translator named Lu and asked, "Lu, what do you think about Yang's Swedish?" He looked into Lu's eyes and said seriously, "Tell me the truth." Lu understood why the director asked him that question. He turned around and glanced at Poplar Fruit. Watching him communicate with Professor Anderson so easily, Lu swallowed his saliva and threw away the trace of jealousy in his heart. He answered seriously, "Poplar Fruit speaks Swedish very well. I can't compare with him. Also, I think he's the best speaker I've ever seen. Even the teachers in my undergraduate class can't speak as well as he does." Lu graduated from the Capital International Studies University. He only did his undergraduate degree, but among his teachers, there were many decent Swedish scholars. Clearly, he had a very high opinion of Poplar Fruit. The director of the Ministry of Education also waved his hand and called Su Kaijin over. Although Su Kaijin was a newly promoted deputy director, he had a strong background. When the director talked to him, he asked politely, "Su, who is this young guy that you found?" He's my neighbor. Although he's just a youngster, I still think highly of him." Su Kaijin smiled and said, "Oh yeah, didn't you buy a copy of the biography of Steve Jobs for your child's birthday? That was translated by Poplar Fruit." "Oh. In that case, he is also experienced in translating things." The director nodded and said with a hint of reminiscence. He still remembered how happy his son was when he received the gift, and how he couldn't bear to put it down. Su Kaijin added, "Oh yeah, he's also a top translator from Sinda." When it came to Sinda, the director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was familiar with them. Sinda was the leader of the translation industry in Guangdong province, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had a lot of contact with them. Yang should be a translator. He should be Yao Dehua's man. The director smiled and said, I'll make a call and ask. After that, he took out his phone and went to the side to make a call. After a while he came back and said, Yao Dehua seems to think highly of this young man, Poplar Fruit. He said that as long as Poplar Fruit is confident, then Poplar Fruit will definitely do a good job. You might not know Yao Dehua, but he's a very capable person. He never lies. Since he said that today, Yang must have something special about him. Su Kaijin smiled and asked, You said that there are so many Poplar Fruit books that I'm almost confused. What's going on here? The director of the Ministry of Education smiled and said, It's like this. Professor Anderson came this time to ask teacher Mo Yen to translate a few of his representative books into Swedish, so that it'll be easier for the judges to review them. Bullshit, Su Kaijin said disdainfully. They can't possibly have to translate all of the books into Swedish for them to read, right? That's too much work. Definitely not all of them. That's why, from another perspective, it proves that teacher Mo Yen has a great chance, said the director of the Ministry of Education. Mo Yen continued, Because time is tight, I have to submit the manuscript in the middle of February. There aren't many people in the country who can do this. If Poplar Fruit is good enough, I'd like to ask him to translate one book for me. Hearing that, Su Kaijin frowned and said slowly, Poplar Fruit is still young. If we give it to him, will it? He said the same thing as the director of the Ministry of Education, but with a different motive. He wanted to protect Poplar Fruit. This wasn't a small matter. If Poplar Fruit didn't translate well, or if Mo Yen didn't win the Nobel Prize in Literature, it would be a huge blow to Poplar Fruit. Moreover, he would also be questioned because of this, and some irrational people would even blame him for the mistake. Like Yao Dehua, he had high hopes for Poplar Fruit. He believed that in the future, Poplar Fruit would definitely achieve great things. But if he were to pull the seedling to help it grow, it would destroy him without a doubt. Based on the information he had gathered, Mo Yen started to have a clearer understanding of Poplar Fruit. Professor Anderson thought highly of him, meaning that Poplar Fruit was indeed good at Swedish. He was able to answer Mo Yan's questions with confidence and fluency, which meant that Poplar Fruit knew a lot about Mo Yan's work. The director of the Ministry of Education and the others had been making suggestions. At last, Mo Yen was the one who made the final decision. Mo Yen walked to Poplar Fruit, crossed his arms, and asked with a smile, Poplar Fruit, have you made up your mind? On the way home, the city was lit up by the neon lights. Poplar Fruit sat in the back seat of a taxi with Kiki and Zheng Yujia, looking outside through the blurry window. When they got home, Gold ran up to them while wagging its tail. Kiki took off her heavy clothes and regained her energy. Only then did Poplar Fruit feel a little bit more real. What happened today was like a dream. He was only attending a lecture with Zheng Yujia, but somehow, he became the main character of the lecture. Not only did he coax a Swedish professor who was dressed like a noble, but he was also recognized by a master like Mo Yen, and given an important task. He was going to translate a literary work with 490,000 words within a month. In terms of time and number of words, that was much more difficult than translating the biography of Steve Jobs. And he accepted it with pleasure. Perhaps, it was because of the demon in his heart that longed for challenges. But that was good. That was another peak that he needed to climb. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't forget about Zheng Yujia's mission. After he agreed to Mo Yan's request, he introduced him to Zheng Yujia. Maybe because he was too excited today, Zheng Yujia didn't spend too much time persuading him. Mo Yan agreed without hesitation. No matter if he won an award or not, she would help him sell the book overseas. If he won an award, he would get a higher percentage of the profits. Zheng Yujia's generous offer was one of the reasons why Mo Yan was attracted to her. Zheng Yujia was very happy to get the overseas copyright of Mo Yan's books except for English. When she got home, she held Poplar Fruit's hand and said that she couldn't believe it. Oh, how about I try to leave his book for you to translate? Zheng Yujia said happily. I know that you can speak French, Spanish, and many other languages. Poplar Fruit was stunned. He smiled and said, Then aren't you going to tire me to death? Zheng Yujie put her arm around Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said like a good brother. Of course not. I plan to leave the best 1 or 2 books for you. And you don't have to flip through all of them. Just grab a few mainstream ones and do it for me. Poplar Fruit was tempted. He smiled and said, Then what kind of reward are you going to give me? Zheng Yujie's eyes lit up and said, I suggest that you don't sell the copyright of your translation right now. Wait until he wins an award. I mean, if he wins, then your price can be multiplied a few times. Zheng Yujie already thought of herself as a member of the Yang family. She sold the publishing house together with Poplar Fruit. She wondered what Pang Yu, who wanted to nurture her, would think if he knew. Chapter 169. After accepting this job, Poplar Fruit began to translate day and night. Of course, there was also a word that could describe his current situation, and that was shut-in. Apart from his daily morning exercise and grocery shopping, Poplar Fruit almost never stepped out of the door. His friends invited him for afternoon tea, his godmother invited him over for dinner, Song Jiwen invited him to play games, but Poplar Fruit rejected all of them. The task this time was much more difficult than he had imagined. The literary works such as the biography of Steve Jobs, that he had translated in the past could not be completely counted as literature. Their narrative function was far more than that of literature. Relatively speaking, Life and Death Fatigue, with its precise wording and complicated plot, could be counted as a literary work in the full sense of the word. Moreover, this time it was a hit. Translating from Chinese to English was more difficult than translating from English. That was because Chinese translators were more familiar with expressing themselves in Chinese. As for mid-flip roue, the difficulty was countless times higher than mid-flipping. Swedish was harder to master than English, and there weren't many examples to learn. Other than the translations by Professor Ma Yueran, the translations by other people were lackluster. Therefore, even though he knew every detail of the book by heart, Poplar Fruit still encountered many difficulties when translating it. How could he translate it properly? How could the Swedish readers not feel awkward when they read the book? How could he fully express the unique Chinese culture and customs of the novel, and make it easy for the readers to understand? These were all things that Poplar Fruit had to ponder over. Sometimes, Poplar Fruit would even have to think of hundreds of possibilities to choose a word. Even with his superhuman IQ, it would take him a lot of effort to figure it out. The after effect was that Kiki was often neglected. Poplar Fruit could indeed multitask, but sometimes if he put too much effort into one aspect, he would be a little slow on the other. For example, there was once when he was feeding Kiki milk. Kiki had sucked up all the milk in the bottle, but he was still carrying Kiki and pacing around with the pacifier in Kiki's mouth. Kiki protested many times because of this. Poplar Fruit apologized to Kiki every time, but the next time, he made the same mistake in other things. To prevent radiation, Poplar Fruit never took out the computer to type when he was playing with Kiki in the living room. He would only draft in his mind. This caused him to be absent-minded when he played games with Kiki. Kiki held a small toy in front of him, but he didn't even blink. Fortunately, with Gold accompanying her, Chi-Chi didn't feel too bored. Goldie was now running steadily. It was no longer as crooked as before. Every day, it was full of energy and day. Poplar poise, poi papa papa poi, popoi, papa po papa papa poise and papa poi papa 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 papa. One of the games that Kiki liked to play was to catch Papa Poi's tail. Every time, when Papa Poi's tail started to move, Kiki would see it and immediately throw away the toy in her hand. She would quickly crawl over and reach out to catch it. In the beginning, when Papa Poi was inconvenient, Kiki often succeeded. Later, as it ran more smoothly, Kiki began to lose control of Papa Poi. It could be seen crawling and waving its hands. But just when Kiki was about to touch it, Papa Poi would nimbly turn its body and run 2 steps forward. Then it would turn back to look at Kiki. Its tail would move again and again, as if it was fishing. Kiki never got tired of it. She chuckled and chased after it. When she got tired, she would directly lie down on the carpet and gasp for breath. At this time, Goldie would stand in the same place and continue to wag its tail, waiting for Kiki to come up and play with it. However, Kiki didn't want to move at all. Goldie waited for a while and whimpered twice. When it saw that its little master was ignoring it, it lowered its head and slowly moved over. Kiki reached out and touched Goldie's small and fluffy body. Goldie then lay down and put its head under Kiki's armpit, begging for Kiki's touch. Of course, Kiki didn't know how to stroke Goldie's little head. She just patted it lightly and heavily. Generally speaking, the strength was not great. Goldie narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. If she was tired, Kiki's hand that was patting Goldie would slowly stop. Her small nose would slightly snort, and she would gradually fall asleep. Goldie raised half of its body and looked at Kiki. Then it continued to lie down. Leaning against Kiki, it closed its eyes and fell asleep. This scene was very loving. Poplar Fruit woke up from his thoughts. When he saw Kiki and Goldie snuggling up to each other, he smiled from the bottom of his heart. It was quite troublesome to raise Goldie. Just like Kiki, it had to drink milk several times a day, and he also had to find ways to give it nutrients. Moreover, Goldie hadn't learned how to clean itself in the toilet. Therefore, Poplar Fruit had to remind it to be careful in the beginning. Otherwise, it wouldn't know when it would step on it. Later on, when Poplar Fruit was changing Kiki's diaper, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Why not put diapers on Goldie? Therefore, despite Goldie's objection, Poplar Fruit put a diaper on it. Although it looked funny with its white butt wrapped in something, at least Poplar Fruit didn't have to worry about its size dirtying the carpet, right? Diapers still needed to be changed frequently, just like Kiki. Poplar Fruit was both a human father and a dog father. He had to serve one after another. It was very depressing. But now, seeing Kiki and Goldie so warm and loving, Poplar Fruit felt that everything was worth it. Although the heater was on at home, Poplar Fruit still didn't dare to take it lightly. It was winter, and it was easy to catch a cold without a blanket. He tiptoed around Kiki and Goldie, afraid that he would wake them up from their sweet dreams. He took Kiki's small blanket from the bedroom. When he was about to cover Kiki, Poplar Fruit took back his hand and put the blanket on the sofa next to him. He went to the dining room table and took his mobile phone. He turned on the camera function and took a photo of Kiki and Goldie. Then he covered them with the blanket. Poplar Fruit, who liked to use Weibo to record his daughters every moment, wrote a Weibo post and posted the photo just now. Then he continued to think about his translation work. During dinner, Poplar Fruit looked at the Weibo post. There were many replies and likes. Poplar Fruit clicked on a Weibo post that mentioned his name. He didn't know where this friend found a photo. It was taken by a parent abroad. There was a chubby baby lying on the bed, surrounded by a few puppies. The puppies cutely posed in all kinds of poses, and one of them was lying on its back like the baby, sleeping soundly. That friend mentioned Poplar Fruit's name, and suggested that he raise a few more puppies for Kiki. Poplar Fruit shook his head and closed the Weibo post with a bitter smile. It was already troublesome enough to take care of these two little ones. Raising a few more puppies? Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 170. Ding dong. Ding dong. Knock knock. Knock knock. The visitor knocked on the door when no one answered the doorbell. Coming. After a while, Poplar Fruit came out of the study. He was so focused on typing that he almost didn't notice the knocking. When he opened the door, Poplar Fruit saw Fong Beibei, who was about to leave. Hey, why are you here? Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei in surprise. Today, Fong Beibei was wearing aqua blue jeans, a light blue short cashmere windbreaker, and a white striped long-sleeved shirt. Her hair was tied into a ponytail, and she looked very delicate and neat. Yonghua felt her eyes light up, and she couldn't get enough of looking at her. It's time for winter break. I came to see Kiki and Goldie before I go home. Fong Beibei smiled at Poplar Fruit and said, I've been ringing the doorbell for so long. I thought you weren't home. Come in, Poplar Fruit said happily. Fong Beibei came in, put down her bag, and started to take off her jacket. She said, Your house is so warm. My dorm and my house don't turn on the heater in winter. I have to wear a jacket to close the windows and close the door. It's so troublesome. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, the heater is mainly turned on for Kiki. She doesn't like to wear too much. I'm afraid she'll catch a cold. Poplar Fruit poured water for Fang Beibei and asked, aren't you from Yangqing? Why do you say you're going home? Yangqing is also zoned. Fang Beibei said, my house is in Nansha. It's quite far. Is there a subway? It won't be convenient to come back if I go home. That's still more convenient than me. Poplar Fruit laughed. It takes me a few hours to get back, and I have to take the train and transfer to the bus. It's really troublesome. Speaking of this, Poplar Fruit suddenly remembered that he wanted to buy a car. It seemed that he should really consider buying a car. Kiki was also slowly growing up. With a child's seat, it shouldn't be a problem for her to take a car. Then it would be convenient for her to go anywhere. It wouldn't be like before, when he had to go for her checkup, he couldn't wait for a taxi and had to squeeze in the bus. But now was not the time to think about it. He would think about it after he finished the translation at hand. Right, you're going back to your hometown soon, aren't you? Fang Beibei asked. The spring festival is in less than 7 days. Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded. So fast? In this short period of time, he had been working tirelessly day and night to translate, and had forgotten about the passing of time. When he heard Fang Beibei say this, he then remembered that today was the 26th of January. Don't tell me you haven't bought a ticket yet? Fang Beibei looked at him and guessed. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, yeah, it should be sold out by now. Then what should we do? Do you take the bus back? Fang Beibei asked. Poplar Fruit shook his head. The bus was too painful, and Kiki would feel uncomfortable sitting on it. He thought about it and smiled. No, I'll take a plane directly to the airport in the city, and then I'll rent a taxi and take it back. Fang Beibei threw him a dirty look and said, you can't spend money like this. Why did you forget to buy a ticket before? Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and said, I recently took on a translation job. I was working and forgot about the time. Oh, Kiki's cries came from the bedroom. Poplar Fruit stood up reflexively. After standing up, he smiled at Fang Beibei and said, my little ancestor woke up from her afternoon nap. Fang Beibei followed him into the bedroom and watched Poplar Fruit carry Kiki. He patted her back and gently coaxed her by her ear. A child's grumpiness when waking up was indeed an unsolvable problem. No matter how soundly she slept, she liked to cry for a period of time when she woke up. Poplar Fruit had found such an excuse to comfort himself. Well, Kiki's crying could be considered as practice. After all, when her father was with her, Kiki was very obedient and rarely cried. Crying was good for expanding her lung capacity. Kiki, Sister Beibei that you always wanted to play with is here today. Poplar Fruit whispered in Kiki's ear. After Fang Beibei repeatedly objected and threatened to revert to the weird uncle title, Poplar Fruit changed his words and acknowledged Fang Beibei's seniority in front of Kiki. He no longer allowed Kiki to call Fang Beibei auntie. Kiki, don't cry. Come and let Sister Beibei hug you, okay? Fang Beibei smiled and stretched out her hands. When Kiki heard Fang Beibei's call, she cried and glanced at Fang Beibei with teary eyes. She hugged her father's neck and couldn't react for a moment. She had just woken up and her mind was still in a mess. However, she still let go of her father's arms and turned to Fang Beibei's embrace. Fang Beibei hugged her and comforted her softly. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and walked out of the bedroom with them. In the bright living room, Kiki's crying gradually slowed down. When Goldie heard the sound, it wagged its tail and came over. It raised its head and looked at the unreachable Kiki. It could only circle around Fang Beibei's heels. Fang Beibei was barefoot and wearing slippers. Goldie sniffed and began to lick it with its tongue. The wet feeling tickled Fang Beibei and made her laugh. Without a daughter to hug, Poplar Fruit picked up Goldie and sat on the other sofa. However, Goldie obviously forgot about its father Young the moment it saw Chi-Chi. It kept trying to break free. Poplar Fruit could only let it go. Goldie ran to the edge of the sofa and hesitated. For it, the sofa's height was no less than a cliff. It was frightened just by looking at it. It stuck its head out and looked around, but it didn't dare to jump down. Poplar Fruit looked at it in amusement. He felt that Goldie was very interesting and wanted to trap Goldie for a while longer. Fong Beibei kicked Poplar Fruit and rolled her eyes at him. She said, "Hurry up and put Goldie down. It's as fun as a child." Goldie was carried down and then placed on the sofa Fong Beibei was sitting on. Fong Beibei was sitting on the sofa. Although it wasn't as wide as the floor, Goldie could still run around on it. It moved around actively for a while, and then came over to rub its head against Kiki's foot. "Uncle, you've taken good care of Goldie," Fong Beibei said with satisfaction. "Look at its movements, I know it's very healthy." "That's right, don't you know who I am?" Yonghua proudly patted her chest and said. "You're so full of yourself after praising you. It seems that I can't say good things about you in the future," Fong Beibei said with disdain. "Don't." Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, "Actually, I can do so well because of your patient teaching. All the credit belongs to you." "Humph," Fong Beibei said with a nasal sound to show her disdain for Poplar Fruit's flattery. Kiki looked left and right in Fong Beibei's arms, and even played with Goldie with the tip of its foot. Poplar Fruit talked to Fong Beibei about her exams. "How did you do on your final exam?" Poplar Fruit used to have a very painful final exam every semester. Most of the time in university, he would play crazily for a semester and then study hard self-study for a month. In the end, whether he could pass the final exam or not depended on the results of this month's study. Fong Beibei shouldn't be a bad student like Poplar Fruit, but when she talked about the final exam, she suddenly became gloomy. "I don't know. I think English is quite difficult. I didn't have time to do a lot of the questions. Out of the 4 reading papers, 2 of the 10 questions were guessed," Fong Beibei said with distress. Poplar Fruit asked, "Didn't you say you were studying? Didn't you study English? You only studied for your major?" "Why do I need to study for mathematics?" Fong Beibei said. "I can do well in the naked exam. It's just that English is too difficult. I studied for 2 weeks and looked at English questions. In the end, I still couldn't do it." "How was your essay? Did you have time to finish it?" Poplar Fruit asked. "No, I wrote half of the words and I didn't know how to continue," Fong Beibei said with a sigh. It seems that Fong Beibei's English is really bad to a certain extent. As long as she has a little foundation, she can make up enough words for the essay. After all, the English she learned this semester is not much different from high school English. "Come back after Chinese New Year, I'll teach you," Poplar Fruit suggested. "I'll train you for a few days, how about that?" Seeing that Fong Beibei was silent, he said anxiously, "I'm serious. Maybe your way of thinking when learning English is not right. I can analyze it for you." "That's not good, right?" Fong Beibei swallowed her saliva and said, "You're quite busy too." "Not at all," Poplar Fruit laughed. "My work this time will be finished after the Lantern Festival." "But it's not good to trouble you like this, right? And English?" Fong Beibei said hesitantly. Hearing the last few words before her voice lowered, Poplar Fruit suddenly understood what Fong Beibei was hesitating about. Fong Beibei was resisting learning English. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "You're worried that I won't be able to teach well? Let me tell you, I might not be good at teaching other things, but I'm definitely good at teaching English." No. Fong Beibei shook her hand and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid that I won't be able to learn well." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and laughed. "What's there to be afraid of? Give it a try. Do you want to continue like this? Do you want to let English drag you down?" He continued to add fuel to the fire and said, "You don't have to worry about the trouble of traveling back and forth. Because I'm about to start my master's, I'll probably have to rent a house near the school. If you come over to study, you can help me keep Kiki company. Look at her, she's all alone, how pitiful." In order to convince Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit even used Kiki's emotional card. Helplessly looking at Poplar Fruit, Fong Beibei finally nodded her head. Fong Beibei agreed. Poplar Fruit's heart was filled with joy, and he could not help but have a silly smile on his face. But Fong Beibei did not see it. She lowered her head and lovingly touched Kiki's little face. That pair of clear and kind eyes were overflowing with the light of love at this moment. Poplar Fruit was a bit dazed. He did not know why, but he thought of some people and some things. The past could not be changed. The people who left were silent in time. What else could he do? Cherish the present and grasp the present. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 171. Worried about her translation work, Yanghua sat with Fang Beibei for a while. Seeing that they were having fun and had nothing to do for the time being, she ran back to the study to continue working. The door of the study wasn't closed. From time to time he could hear Kiki's excited screams and Fang Beibei's laughter. However, Poplar Fruit calmed himself down and immersed himself in the sea of words. He couldn't hear the noise in the living room. Fatigue of Life and Death was a work full of imagination. Mr. Mo Yin used an ancient style to depict the difficult changes in the Chinese rural society over the past 50 years through the eyes of various animals and different perspectives. He sublimated the understanding of suffering in the carnival of suffering. The biggest problem Poplar Fruit faced in translating the book wasn't how to understand it. He was a child who grew up in a village and moved from a village to a big city. He was no stranger to the life in the village and some of the difficulties in the village. But the problem was how to express it in another language. A direct translation wouldn't work. A Chinese person who learned Swedish might be able to read Poplar Fruit's translation with great interest. However, for a Swedish person, they didn't know much about Chinese culture. Reading it would be like chewing wax. It would be tasteless. One way was to translate it into a Western realistic fantasy novel. However, there was a flaw in that. Other people might be able to understand it, but the rich Chinese culture in the book would be gone. What was the difference between it and the other novels in the competition? Poplar Fruit didn't want to be sloppy with his translation. It was related to his professional ethics and personal beliefs. Therefore, his previous translations were always intermittent and bumpy. However, today Poplar Fruit's translation was extraordinarily smooth. Many problems that had troubled him before seemed to have been solved. Vaguely, Poplar Fruit seemed to have found a way to balance and fit between the two methods. It was magical to suddenly be enlightened. In fact, many people would have such an experience. When they were frustrated or heartbroken, their minds would be in a mess, like a ball of cotton wool, and they couldn't concentrate on anything. But if there was a happy occasion, they would be energized all of a sudden, and they would be able to do anything easily. He didn't know if it was because Fang Beibei's mood had become bright and cheerful, but Yanghua felt that right now, his thoughts were gushing out like a fountain. Character after character, sentence after sentence, scrambled to be the first to jump out of his head. His fingers tapped lightly on the keyboard. The rhythm was bright and fast, and the sound was continuous. In the ears of Poplar Fruit, who had a poor sense of music, it was not inferior to the sound of nature. The exhilaration of translating one article after another was so exhilarating that it was impossible to stop. After an unknown amount of time, Poplar Fruit was happily writing when he felt a sudden pain at the roots of his hair. Someone was pulling his hair back. Poplar Fruit was suddenly awakened from his state of complete concentration. He heard Kiki's proud laughter. Turning his head, he saw Kiki's innocent smile. Looking up, Poplar Fruit saw Fang Beibei, who was holding back her laughter and looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Fang Beibei said hurriedly. I came in mainly to see what you were doing. Sorry to disturb you. Poplar Fruit also laughed happily. He stood up, turned around and pinched Kiki's little face. He smiled and said, It's okay. I can also take a break. Are you translating in English? Fang Beibei pointed at the screen and said, I can't understand a single word. That's so frustrating. Poplar Fruit was stunned, then laughed and said, It's not English. If it's English, how can you not understand a single word? Look, there's not even a be verb here. Phew. Fang Beibei breathed a sigh of relief and said, I thought I was hopeless. Haha, this is in Swedish. It's normal that you can't understand it. Poplar Fruit laughed. You know Swedish? Fang Beibei asked in surprise. That's not right. Since when did our school have a Swedish major? Indeed we don't. I learned it myself. Poplar Fruit explained. Comparisons are odious. Fong Beibei sighed and said, It's so difficult for me to learn English, but you can learn Swedish on your own. Poplar Fruit comforted her and said, Don't belittle yourself. Everyone's talent is different. Look, you can learn math so easily, but I want to sleep when I see math problems. After chatting for a while, Fong Beibei followed Kiki back to the living room. Poplar Fruit continued to translate. He planned to strike while the iron was hot today and translate more. He also wanted to see if he could summarize some insights. When it was almost 5 o'clock, Fong Beibei looked at her phone and then looked at the sky outside. She wondered if it was time to leave and go back to school. At this time, the music of Castle in the Sky suddenly rang in the house. Although the song Castle in the Sky was very pleasant to listen to, it was so sudden that Fong Beibei was still shocked. Looking for the sound, Fong Beibei finally saw the phone on the dining room table. However, because it rang for a long time, it automatically hung up. Poplar Fruit did not respond at all. Fong Beibei shook her head and sat back down. However, just as her butt touched the stool, the ringtone rang again. Poplar Fruit's input was so deep that it probably would not be heard even if it rang a few more times. Fong Beibei stood up and was about to take the phone to Poplar Fruit. The phone was placed on the dining table facing up. The screen lit up with the caller's information, Duan Xueqing. Fong Beibei's hand froze. This name should be from a woman. And it looked like a fairy. After pausing in the air, Fong Beibei picked up the phone and walked to Poplar Fruit's study. When she walked in, the phone had been disconnected again. She gently touched Poplar Fruit, who was staring at the screen. What's wrong? Poplar Fruit recovered and asked Fong Beibei. Someone just called you twice. I don't know if it's urgent. Fong Beibei handed the phone to Poplar Fruit. Oh, I didn't pay attention. Poplar Fruit quickly took the phone and opened the missed call list. It was Duan Xueqing. Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei. He was a little hesitant, but he still pressed the callback button. Fong Beibei was not interested in staying in the room to listen to Poplar Fruit's call. She turned and went back to the living room. After a while, Poplar Fruit came out. He went into the bedroom and took a jacket. He put it on and said to Fong Beibei, Beibei, can you help me take care of Kiki? My friend needs my help. I'll be back soon. Fong Beibei opened her mouth and hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Also, wait for me to come back so we can eat together. Okay. Fong Beibei responded briefly. She watched Poplar Fruit open the door and leave. His back disappeared behind the door. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.